Welcome to Drunk, a Song of Ice and Fire, special Valentine's edition of Whatcha Thinkin' About. I guess we can call it Whatcha Shippin' About. I'm your host, Chloe, and I am here with PoorQuentyn, better known as Emmett Booth in the real life world. He's a great writer, has written many amazing theories that you've probably seen, Eldritch Apocalypse with Euron, series on Davos and Theon and Quentin, and also is the handsome, bookish other half of Not a Cast, new podcast with Brendan B. Fish and PoorQuentyn. So, Emmett, say hello.
Hello and hi. Thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to it greatly.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us.
It's true. I am the handsome, bookish half of Not a Cast. The other half is the lumpen, ugly, intolerable Jeff Hartline, who just recently became a father yet again. So congratulations, I guess, to him for spawning. I don't feel nothing.
Congratulations to his wife.
More congratulations to Tina for making it through and thinking of England. I'm very proud of her.
No, congrats to Jeff. He is a good dude. We like to play jokingly that he is a awful person, and he's not that bad. He's just mostly bad.
He just plays one on TV. And by TV, I mean Twitter.
Way he's written.
It's just the way he was raised. Exactly. He can't help it. The poor boy.
Emmett, tell everyone where they can find you on the internet and anything you're working on that you want to boast about. You have the floor, sir.
Talk about myself, Chloe. I would never dream of doing such a thing. You can most of my stuff is at PoorQuentyn.tumblr.com. It's PoRQuentyn.tumblr.com, and I'm at PoorQuentyn on Twitter. As Chloe mentioned, I've been writing a series of essays on A Dance with Dragons on the different POVs in that book. I wrote one on Tyrion and Davos and Quentin, my favorite, and I'm doing one on Theon now, the next one of which will be up tomorrow. So you can look for that on both Tumblr and Twitter. Yeah, Not a Cast. We try to do weekly, chapter by chapter reread through A Song of Ice and Fire. We've recently started. We've gone through the prologue to A Game of Thrones and Bran 1 and Catelyn 1. And our one on Daenerys 1 will be released shortly once Jeff gets over being a father. Because, God, selfish much, Jeff? Really? Think about your priorities, man.
Like Not a Cast, man.
Like me. Everything is about me. I don't understand why people don't get this.
Editor's note, just to put it out there, Theon Part 2 will be out on the 5th. Unfortunately, this will not be airing until the 14th, so it will be a thing of the past. So basically, everyone listening, please get on his ass to finish Part 3.
Yes, by the time you hear this, I will already be procrastinating on the third part, so indeed.
'Tis the way. Today, I kind of made Emmett get on with me so we could do some discussing for a special Valentine's edition of What You Thinking About, in talking about relationships in A Song of Ice and Fire. He agreed, kicking and screaming, obviously.
I immediately regret this decision.
He was like, oh no, a chance to get drunk with you on Skype and talk about relationships in A Song of Ice and Fire.
That doesn't sound like the best idea at all.
He is my consort, so I thought it would be a very fitting episode to get one of the most brilliant minds in the community on to talk about some menial makeout shit. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I love it.
We're going to do this real interesting format-wise. We both came up with our top 5 relationships in A Song of Ice and Fire. We're going to try to guess each other's top 5, not necessarily in order, because I don't know where his heart truly lies, besides, like, Euron or, like, the charred ashes of Quentin.
That's my main ship, Euron with the charred ashes of Quentin. What those two crazy kids will get up together, you have no idea. No idea, Chloe. No one understands the but me.
Talk about a crack ship.
Mm-hmm.
There will be tons of those. We're going to discuss, I mean, not even just these, but first things first. I mean, what you drinking tonight, man?
Well,
what you drinking?
As you know well, Chloe Ketchum, I'm trash.
True.
I have zero taste in anything worthwhile. So when I think of what I have to drink for a sustained period of drinking, my mind goes to get a bunch of tiny bottles of whiskey and shove them in your face. So that's what I did. I just bought 6 little bottles of Crown Royal honey whiskey, and I'm consuming them one by one, glorying in my own filth. And what about you, dear? What are you drinking?
This is going to take a minute because I talked to you about it before we got on, but I had a day I accidentally didn't buy enough wine. You ever not? I Cersei Lannistered too hard. I drank too much wine is really actually what happened. I wasn't planning on drinking all I drank. So I only had a bottle and a half of wine left. And like, that sounds like a lot to the normal human. I kind of did a concoction then because I was like, what do I have in my house? And I had like maybe like an inch left of blue curacao and an inch of vodka left. And I just like muddled frozen berries into blue curacao and vodka and then put it in the shaker. And by shaker, I mean an empty bottle of Burnett's vodka that I had laying around and then put wine in with it and muddled it further. And then now I'm pouring it, and it's about like I'd say 40% that muddled wine, and then like regular wine. Did you follow that? Did you write that down?
I took notes. Will there be a test?
Yes, there will be a test after we guess each other's relationships.
The real test. Yeah, exactly. The drink test will just be a nice little after dinner mint.
It'll be like a palate cleanser.
Precisely, man. I gotta get these right, or the whole relationship gets called into question. It means I don't understand you and your instincts about love and people. I'm on the line here, folks. I hope you appreciate that.
Hundreds of people listening in are about to hear whether you will succeed and prosper in this relationship, or you're gonna fall to your demise.
I'm gonna try to grasp a star, overreach, and fell. It's gonna be like Chris Pratt when he doesn't know that Neutral Milk Hotel was his wife's favorite band. We're gonna go full Parks and Rec here. We're screwed.
Who makes the best mac and cheese? Emmett.
True. The key is jalapenos. Right. Anyway.
God, all up in that mac and cheese.
I know.
All right, you want to guess mine first, or you want me to go for yours first?
All right, I'm gonna guess your 5, huh? Okay.
I also have 2 honorable mentions, and you don't have to guess those, but you'll get extra points if you do.
Will I now? System. Oh my. Gotta crack my neck and get the Rocky music playing and the whole deal. All right.
Oh, you didn't actually want it. Okay, go ahead.
I just suspect, this is a guess that came to me in a dream.
Fuck you, Emmett. I hate you. I don't even like you that much.
Howland and Ashara, perhaps. Perhaps might be one of the 5.
It might be one of the 5. Would you like to know, or would you like to guess what number it is?
I'm going to guess it might be 5 or 4 or 1. I'm guessing it's 1. I'm guessing it's number 1 on the list of 5. 1.
It's number 1.
Is it now?
Yeah.
And number 2, let's see. I'm gonna go with Terminator and the Predator. Let's go with that one. That's number 2.
What the?
Oh, off top. Oh wait, this is a different list. What? Never mind. Different list. Different Google Doc. Move it aside. For the other 4, well, I'm guessing Sansa and Sandor are on there. Somewhere high. Somewhere perhaps number 2 or 3. That high?
They're number 2.
They're number 2. Excellent.
This is unfair.
So well. Do you feel attacked?
I feel really attacked already.
Would you like your money back for the relationship?
I feel like I might surprise you. Yeah, I do want my money back. I'm not going to surprise you. You're going to guess all of these. You know me very well.
Well, I'm not sure where the next one falls in the following 3 slots, but I know it's on there, and that's Asha and Carl.
Yeah, it's on there.
Is it number 4? Or is it number 3?
It's number 3.
It's number 3. I'm on a roll.
Okay, I'd like an interruption because I do feel,
yes.
In my defense,
in your
it's
defense,
also like this is something we'll totally go into. Relationships in A Song of Ice and Fire are all very toxic. Not very many are pure, and I don't feel right shipping very many toxic things. Like Sanson's as toxic as I feel like I can get in the fandoms. Most of mine are pure, so like they're kind of easy. I'm pretty easy, is what I'm saying to guess. Okay, so you.
I would also posit that you wear them on your sleeve to a certain extent, my lady.
Mostly to those 3. Yeah, that's the extent.
That's true. That's fair. Okay, now the following 2 would be more difficult.
Oh, you're like rolling the dice. You're like, here we go, big money, big money.
I'm gonna hazard a guess that Cat and Ned are on there.
Nope,
didn't make it.
Nope. Did you like how smug that was? I was like, nope.
She's getting the head shaken to the side and the eyebrows down. All right, that's perfectly fair. Jon and Ygritte?
No, actually, which I kind of
Really?
like.
I would have suspected.
I thought about it, but also I didn't have time for porridge and beautiful wildling woman. So
Mm.
I mean, Jon
Cold.
Snow.
Cold is nice.
Yeah, cold porridge, very cold porridge.
I
Yes.
like it. I like it. I like it. Okay. Well,
Game changer. I just wrecked your world, Booth.
Well, now it opens up into a bunch of different possibilities, and I'm not sure which to elevate above other ones. Did Arya and Gendry make the cut?
They got an honorable mention.
Okay.
And it succinctly says, with an asterisk, when they're older. I just want to put that out there.
Absolutely. Let's clarify that immediately.
Then there's also FYI. Does not say that by Sansa at me. I don't care anymore. I don't even. I wish I could. You know what? I've spent so much time defending it and saying, well, when they're older and when they're healed, I don't care. I don't care when it happens. It could happen right now. It could happen 10 years from now. It could never happen. It's not going to happen probably officially, but I digress.
And that's what it's like inside Chloe's head.
At me.
I will, with pleasure. Now, I know we're not hardcore Jaime Brienne people, but they are an excellent pair. Are they on your list?
They are on my list because, okay, and I'll get into why. We'll come back to this, obviously.
We're going to come back to, obviously, to delve into
but
why.
They are. They're number 4. That's one that I was kind of surprised I put on there. I mean, I chose these when I was drunk, surprisingly. Mm-hmm. So they're mostly accurate. I would say I would maybe tweak things now that I'm drunk a different night, but...
That's fair. That's fair. Okay. Let me think now. We're down to 1, folks.
This is a curveball. I don't think you're going to guess this right away, but I think you're going to be really, I can't tell you how you're going to feel, but you're going to feel about it. You're like...
Well, because, we haven't had anything really particularly crackshippy so far. Is it Roose and Walda?
No, it's not. I thought about them too, though.
She's trying to help me with her eyebrows again, folks. I fear I'm not picking it up.
Yeah, that wouldn't help you probably. You're on your last one. You're so close. Come on, dude. You got this.
I'm sweating and tugging at my collar. Well, we haven't had a gay one yet either. Is it Theon and Rob?
No, it's not Throb.
Well, I knew it wasn't going to be Thramsey.
No, it's not Thramsey either. Good call. Not for me. Too soft. Too soft for that.
Exactly. I'm too much of a dewy eggshell in the morning for that. Is it Stavos?
Yeah.
Yay!
I knew you were going to be proud.
I'm extremely proud.
I was like, the second he won't guess it at first. I'm like, I know he won't. But the second he hears it, he's going to be like, that's my baby.
I'm very pleased. I'm very satisfied.
And then I have one other honorable mention. You want to try it? I don't think you'll get it.
I might have to surrender to you on that one, babe.
Okay. I know you're tired. You did a very good job of guessing the other ones. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I
did. Yeah, you did. 10 points for Slytherin. My other one is, which this one was also, again, remember, these are how I did this drunk, is the Night King and his corpse queen, his corpse bride.
I never would have guessed that, but I approved immediately.
I know. It reminds me of you and me, just because I'm really pale, big bright blue eyes.
And I fear nothing and would probably sacrifice people in my giant cold castle.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, actually.
That sounds kind of hot.
I ship it.
All right.
All right, I gotta guess yours.
Yeah, you do.
All right, we're gonna nail these down real easy.
Mm-hmm.
Carl and Asha.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
3?
Number 2.
Number 2.
Mm-hmm. They're very sweet.
They're very soft. Jon Con and Mooten.
That is my honorable mention right there.
Ah, yes, good for me.
Very well done.
I know you're.
That is my favorite gay couple in the series for sure.
Stavos.
Actually, did not make my top 5 out of pure allegiance to their platonic relationship that I love so dearly.
Aw, that's sweet. You just don't want to think about Stannis rawing Davos.
I think of Stannis as Melisandre sexual. So, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I get that. Like fire.
Mm.
Ew. That's what he's. Anyways, okay. We'll talk about his grave digging later. Okay. So what about?
All right, you got one.
Got one. I'm not doing so hot. Oh, Cersei and Victarion.
That is my number one. So we will delve. She knows me well, folks, as we will delve into when we get to the
Your
whys.
number one.
That is my glorious crack trash strip. It's the best thing in life.
You're the best human in the universe.
It's true. It's
okay.
True.
I had a feeling. I got the top two, but I just feel like I barely even know you. Shit. Who are you? Oh man, I'm not doing so hot. Sansa.
Sorry.
No, you defend it though. I've seen you.
I totally defend it. If it was just
You're
the
killing
first,
me, Smalls.
if it was just the first 3 books, it would have. But the lack of, when the 5-year gap died, a lot of my hope for it kind of withered because I'm like, he's probably not within the space of the series. He's probably not going to do it then because
yeah, he's just in her arms or something.
Exactly. No, but on the basis of their earlier conversations, it's definitely there. It just hasn't held up for me in the same way. Plus, I wanted to yield space for you to talk about it because I know you can so eloquently. She'll never forgive me, folks. But anywho, you got 3 more to guess. Can she do it?
I've got 3 more. Gendry and Arya.
Sorry, nope.
I understand. I mean, it made mine as honorable for that reason.
Each other up, but they're so young. I think it's cute from Arya's perspective. There's no way you can really think about it from Gendry's perspective at this point. It doesn't kind of make me go, because she's so small.
Small, yeah. No, I get that.
But the fact that she looks at his abs for like 3 hours is the most adorable thing ever. I do love that.
I'm just saying they had their sisterly sexual awakenings. Sansa about Sandor and Arya about Gendry. She's like, oh, abs. Sansa's like, oh, wow, that was a dream.
It's the one thing their sisters have in common is they love their broad-shouldered men.
Okay, Ned and Cat, you vanilla ass bitch.
That is number 3. Yes, this is true.
Did you read that sex scene in Catelyn 2 and Aegot?
Yes, it's adorable. I love that mom and dad have sex.
When you get to chapter 2 for Catelyn on Nauticast, I am going to be there adding you. I'm just going to be like, at Nauticast, hey, how about that sex scene at Nauticast?
We're going to be gushing over it, I am sure.
Yes. Plain white missionary people. Okay. So I got 3. Wait, what number is that? Is that 4?
That was number 3. You got 2 more.
Get them in order, at least. That's interesting.
Damn straight. Knocking them down like bowling pins. 2 more.
Okay. Are any of them pre-ASOIAF?
No. Good question.
Okay, they're all modern.
I'm not an excellent backstory guy like you. I'm much more present day.
Hey, well, you know what? That's good though. You're very well versed, so I wouldn't say that. You're versed. Even in the pre-ASOIAF, we hold good discussions.
I'm pretty much like Bran vis-a-vis the Night of the Laughing Tree story when it comes to the backstory. Like other people tell me, and I'm like, that's cool, but I want more like explosions.
Yeah, which brings me to my next guess. I was thinking about this all day. I've been thinking about all this all day. Euron and getting his brain fried by Bran and burnt down by Dany. You ship that, right? That's.
I am erect for that possibility. Yes.
Was it on your list?
Sadly, no. There's no one I can functionally ship Euron with because he's just the ultimate alpha. I know Cersei Euron is a thing among people, especially since the show. But the problem is they're too alpha. They both want to be in charge of everything all the time. They'd just be boasting to each other. There's no actual energy there at all. Like it's not sexy. Cersei needs to be in charge, and Euron needs to be in charge.
True. I mean, we see that from the Taina chapter, so.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, Euron's not letting himself be a mirror swamp anytime soon.
No, I figure no. Definitely not. Cersei can't really deal with that. Okay, 2 more. Man, it's so difficult.
You gotta follow.
Arianne. and Daemon Sand.
That was my other honorable mention. They're very hot together and very sweet. Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
I like that Daemon knows her well enough to call her on her bullshit, which no one else is willing to do. I think that's great. I love Arianne, but she needs that dynamic with someone who is not just a subservient person.
That's important in like any relationship, honestly.
For number 4, remember, follow the more vanilla path that I represent.
Okay, that's true. Vanilla. Sam and Gilly?
Oh, that's a good point. But no, that's relationship is terrible, and everyone should hate it.
Just because of the titty milk?
It's partially that.
Oh, you saved me and now I'm fucking you kind of thing about it, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Like, I like Sam's instincts when they first met in Clash of Kings, when he was trying to tell Jon, like, isn't it our oath to help people like this? Isn't that the point? Like, that was a good dynamic. But the relationship itself, like, there's no other reason he likes her besides that. Like, there's nothing about her personality that he seems to particularly be interested in. There's no real dynamic. Like,
it's kind of Stockholm-y. Like,
it's kind of Stockholm. It's just like they're kind of, which would be okay if it was framed that way.
Mm-hmm.
The way Dany and Drogo is clearly framed that way. But with Sam and Gilly, it's like, it feels like it's supposed to be true love-ish, even though there's nothing really there. So no, not them.
And also because of like how sheltered she is, you know, it's also like kind of like, because it's kind of like taking advantage in a way.
Right, like when she says, "I am your wife now," like I can't like be awe to that, given what her backstory with that word is.
Like she was a mole woman. Like,
sorry,
she was a literal feudal society mole woman was what she was, and he like got her out of there, and now like she's his wife. Like, that's kind of a weird, anyways, I digress.
So now that we've depressed ourselves completely.
Okay, so not Sam and Gilly. Vanilla, though. I had Jon and Ygritte. Wait, Jon and Val.
That's my lady. She corrected herself midway through and found it. That is number 4, Jon and Val. Very good.
Lonely, lovely, lethal. I get it. Okay, I've got one more.
You do.
Vanilla still? Real vanilla? How vanilla are we talking here?
This is not a particularly vanilla one, no.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
I mean, the sex might be, but the very fact that the dynamic exists is not.
Walda and Roose.
That's it. Yep, number 5.
Because of the noises that she makes.
It's so cute, but we'll get into that.
Okay, so you had, from the top, we had number 1 was, oh my god, what were your ships again? Can we do this again?
Drunk to swallow, folks. It's mine are Cersei, Victarion, Asha, Carl, Cat and Ned, Jon and Val, and Roose and Walda.
Okay, right. All right. I got that. I got it down.
It's coherent. There's a philosophy there, damn it.
Man, that sucked. That was hard, Emmett. That was a hard test we just did there.
Well, I mean, you talk more openly about the relationships you're super invested in. You write about them really well, and you theorize about them really well. And my theories tends to this character's gonna like explode things in a really awesome way. So
yeah, you like the mythical and you like all the Lovecraftian influence.
I like
more than
I like all the stuff that reveals how many drugs George R. R. Martin took, because George R. R. Martin very clearly took a lot of drugs.
Yes, very clearly.
You look at the House of the Undying, it's like, I wonder what you were doing all of college.
Definitely tripping balls.
Mm-hmm.
Like straight just tripping. Yeah, I get that. I'm always more invested in like character analysis in general and motivations, obviously. Is like my favorite. I like what makes them tick and why they do actions that they do, but I respect the stuff I don't really understand, like stuff like that. LML, Lucifer means Lightbringer, always does all the mythical astronomy stuff, and I like respect it so much. But I sit there and half the time I'm like, nope, I'm dumb.
Oh, totally.
Don't know what that meant.
Oh, he notices things I never would have put together for sure before, and I love character arc and analysis stuff too. Yeah, I just love the Euron stuff, especially just because it came out of nowhere. Like, it wasn't up until Feast, that kind of genre really wasn't in A Song of Ice and Fire, that kind of weird, spacey, cosmic horror stuff. And then all of a sudden, this dude just walks in with it. So that is always...
Well, and that's what's a cool test to it, too, to how dynamically just different this book is. These books are, like, from, any other fantasy book, any other fantastical series. It's not nothing delves like this. Nothing gives you that broad spectrum like George gives us.
Yeah, it's the density and the range of it. I mean, look at how much you've been able to squeeze out of Ashara just with the handful of mentions that you've been given about her.
Yep, that's 11 mentions.
That's 11 mentions. Anyway, speaking of the lovely lady with the haunting / laughing purple eyes, depending on who is looking at her, shall we get into why?
Yeah, let's start from honorable mentions and go back, though.
All right.
Let's make them work for it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll do an honorable, you do an honorable, I guess, you know? I'll start. You have 2 honorables, right? We did 2. You said Arianne and what was the other honorable?
Oh, I've forgotten it now.
Oh, no.
Well done, us.
Hey, it was a lot of work to get all those out. Let's be real. That was very difficult. I feel accomplished. Like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, man, I need like 10 cigarettes. I don't even smoke cigarettes.
No, but what did I didn't write the honorable mentions down, so now it's slipping my mind. Yikes. I'm still anyway.
Gendria, maybe? Did you say Gendria? No.
Yes, it was Gendria and then Arianne and Sand. Yep.
Oh, cool.
Thank God she's here, folks. That's perfect.
I know. Perfect. Oh, you did this so well. Good job. So I guess let's start off with Gendria, since we both had Gendria on our lists. I didn't actually put a quote down for that, but I think my favorite Gendria moment is definitely when they are in Acorn Hall and she has the dress on and he makes fun of her and the song is playing, Featherbed. It's just a cute little moment.
It's adorable, and then they fight because that's the kid thing of like, I have a crush on you, and my only way to express it or be able to touch you is to punch you. And like, yeah,
and he tears her sleeve off.
And she says she looks like a tree, and he says a nice tree, which is wonderfully clumsy. It's all he's got. It is very sweet, and I do love that, you know, I love that Arya, there's the great irony, as many people have pointed out, that Arya makes fun of Sansa for falling in love with the quote-unquote Baratheon prince, and then Arya falls in love with the actual son of Robert Baratheon. That's a nice, clever bit of writing. I love, you know, all the Arya Sansa parallels and contrasts are always so interesting. And it's, you know, Arya loses people so often that the connections she does makes, you know, burn through the page so fiercely, because by the time you get to Storm, she's like, it's so sad she's expecting to lose everybody after a while. So that kind of affects all her relationships. And that stands very strong with Gendry. She keeps expecting him to run off on her. And then eventually she runs off on him.
Well, and that's a touch I really liked in the show, that scene when Arya says to Gendry, like, I could be your family.
I could be a family.
Oh, that hurts, man. That's sad shit. Because you're like, you want Arya to be happy, and the cool thing about that Baratheon parallel too is, like, I think it would be a really great echo if they did get together in the end, which my headcanon for that is that they rule from stones, from old stones, and because Christopher IV ruled with a hammer.
And you got the wolves in the Riverlands, and yeah, that works beautifully. And I do like the class dynamic in their relationship is interesting. I like that he forces her to recognize that, you know, as much as she wants to get home and be with her family, that the war looks differently from the small folk perspective, and he gets jealous of Edric Dayne because they can relate as nobles. I like that stuff, because a lot of the relationships in Song of Ice and Fire don't really deal with that explicitly, so that's interesting. But yeah, like, you know, the reason, like I said, I don't have it in my top 5 is it's mostly just cute from Arya's perspective, and the relationships I like best in fiction in general are the ones where both sides are really compelling and you like thinking about the relationship from both perspectives, and they're kind of different, but they mesh. And thinking about the relationship from Gendry's perspective is like either a little weird or just like nothing in particular. It's mostly just kind of an Arya thing, which is why I would not have it in the top 5, frankly.
Oh, well, spicy take, Mr. Booth. Which, to be fair, too, again, that's another Arya-Sansa parallel. I mean, Arya's pretty much built up this crush in her head on Gendry, you know. And, I mean, Sansa obviously takes it a little farther, as we'll get to later. But Arya builds this crush up in her head. And like you said, I'm sure that Gendry feels some sort of familial pull. You know, I'm sure he feels like an endearment to her, like, oh, this kid's sister. And maybe when they're older,
Like, it would totally be a thing. I think that is a thing, but I think for now, it's more just platonic endearment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and we'll get into with when you get to Sansa and Sandor. There's just, Sandor's backstory makes him unusually receptive to thinking about Sansa and what she's going through in a way that makes the relationship interesting. Whereas with Gendry and Arya, it's like, there's not that quite same kind of like, there's a, with Sansa and Sandor, there's this weird philosophical connection, like where, their worldviews are interestingly aligned. And with Arya and Gendry, don't really get that,
Yeah, I mean, because Sandor has a more fraternal role in both of their lives than where Gendry has kind of more of the brother role filled, basically. I mean, it's like if she was traveling with, the boys from home.
That's true. I mean, right down to the bastard role, it's almost he's almost a replacement for he's almost a replacement for Jon, as well as being romantic interest. Exactly, the way they sass each other and he looks after her, and he's got the helmet, Jon had the sword. I mean, there's a lot. They're both bastards, of course. There's a lot of that.
Jon used to muss up my hair.
Exactly. So that's all in there. To the extent that, and I'm not the first person to point this out, I wonder if, Martin originally had plans for Jon and Arya to get together. I wonder if he has in part displaced that role onto Gendry in Arya's story. So, but we shall see.
I would be interested about that, and I think that's also something that we'll get to in a bit as we move up and talk the Sansa stuff, because I mean, Sansa has so many suitors and different roles available that it would interest me to hear that. Yeah, they're cute though. They're cute kids. I love that. Like, I hope they do. I don't know, man. I hope they get together in the end. That'd be cool. I mean, no one else really gets her.
They both deserve a little happiness, and it broke my heart when Gendry was calling after her as she ran off from the Brotherhood. That does get to me.
It just makes you a little sad.
It is.
I know. I'm really glad that you're doing this with me, because I literally thought, I'm like, oh, it's us. We're the sad people. So we'll just get real feelsy about relationships. By the end, we're going to be like arms around each other singing Jenny's song, just.
I named my blog after a kid whose whole life was finding out he's not the hero and nothing means anything, and his friends died for nothing, and now he's going to die horribly. Like, that's the fun. You got to just be sad about things.
You okay, Emmett?
Never.
You okay, buddy?
Nope. I'm never going to be okay. Anyway.
What was your next honorable mention? Tell me your feelings about Arianne and Daemon Sand.
Yeah, I think these two were perfect, like, early 20s good relationship. Like, a lot of the relationships we might talk about are like screwed up teenagers or older people who are kind of developing a larger relationship. But like, yeah, I love that. I have a soft spot for, like, we were friends as teenagers, then we were enemies, then we were kind of romantically inclined. I like that they've kind of grown older together. As I said, I love that he is able to lovingly, firmly point out when she is lying to herself, which is an important part of any relationship for sure. I love that, she kind of still wants to sleep with him, but he's like, that it hurts his feelings that he really wants something more out of her, and she knows that, but she still wants part of him around. And it's like, it's this very kind of subtle, sad tension. It hasn't gotten over the top or dramatic in a way that wouldn't feel right. It feels, like a lot of what people complained about the Dornish plot, and I think it's perfectly fair, is how a lot of the stuff with Arianne and Eris Oakheart felt very stilted and kind of hallmarky, and just, it made sense for the characters. Eris Oakheart was a weird virginal guy who had never thought about himself or sex, or like he was just a babe in the woods, and that was the point. That works and it functions well, but like the actual writing of the relationship was, for a lot of people, just not particularly compelling in and of itself. And for me, Arianne Daemon is like the counter example of that. It's, if you look at her released Winds of Winters chapters, there's just a really sense of strong history. It's like the anti-Asha and Triss. Like, Asha and Triss have the same thing of having been their weird, awkward, sexy make-out stages when they were teenagers or first exploring themselves.
And now she hates him.
And now she hates him, right. It's the opposite of that, because Triss refused to grow up and is still reliving that scene, and Asha's moved on. And with Arianne and Daemon, they're both kind of trying to move forward. And here's how I put it. I love that they are trying to find a space for each other in their lives, even though it's kind of awkward and there's no inherent space for each other in their lives anymore. But they still kind of want to they want to be part of each other still. And I think that's very sweet. It's not developed enough for me to have in my top 5. I think as we get more of the relation, I get the feeling from how the relationship works in her released Winds of Winter's chapters that one of the primary sadnesses in Arianne's Winds of Winter tragedy that is going to develop is her relationship with Daemon, and how we're going to get the sense of how it could have been, and like that's the thing she could have had.
And we're going to get the sense of, yeah, that's what it could have been, but also like that she threw her life away to be with this prince, and she's going to end up in flames when he wasn't even real, and Daemon Sand was right there. Ooh, that's gross, George. But anyways, I digress.
It's the parallel to John Con. I mean, like that's
Yep.
And that's again, it's not that's mostly supposition. It's not developed enough to make my top 5.
Well, it's also really, like you're saying, it's one of the most real parts of Dorne. You know, people do complain it's a little fantastical, a little over the top. It's very grounded. It's like a real relationship. These are real problems that real people have.
Absolutely, Arianne and Aerys are very clearly a very plot-driven relationship. It needs to happen for the queen making ceremony to occur. But Arianne and Daemon, it feels very lived in, which, I get that for a lot of people that was the problem with Dorne, is that it felt very much like, hi, I'm George Martin. I'm doing the desert country. Here, I've read all these books where that's done, and I'm doing that part of it. It felt a little very kind of like...
Yeah. George does eroticizing Dorne. Like that's...
Exactly. It feels kind of at a remove, like it's behind glass in a way that a lot of the other story feels very intimate, and like you're really there with the people. Dorne, as much as I love it, he feels like he's not quite comfortable doing this kind of story, or he's not quite at home here, and Arianne and Daemon helps ground it.
Yeah, it's very grounding, and it's one of those slight human characteristics of the plot, and you get that here and there in Dorne, and I think that's kind of also what makes it sad about how it's going to end, because we all know that they're all going to die. I mean, they're all going to die.
Yeah, that's the whole point of the Martells, is that they're a family that is tragically doomed to die horribly over and over again. Like, look at Oberyn and Quentin, both of them. Are there 2 more like viscerally horrifying deaths in the series than Oberyn getting his face smashed in with thumbs, and Quentin not even getting exploded to death immediately with fire, but just enough breath to cover him that he slowly burns to death over 3 days.
His face was like the texture of petroleum jelly. Like,
yeah, his eyes were pools of pus.
Ugh.
Yeah, no, that's the Martells. It's a very sad thing, but yeah, you need that grounding, and that's like I said, I think Arianne and Daemon are partially there to make us sad that Arianne Martell is going to go. And I prediction, and again, not the first to make this prediction, but I would predict that she gets Daemon Sand into the Kingsguard first, after marrying Aegon and getting with. I bet part of how she captures that coalition is she gets a white cloak for Daemon Sand, and they have like a torture little relationship going for a bit.
Well, it's like the confusion of where do I put this relationship? How, like you were saying, how do I make him fit into my life after my life has become so complicated? And it's the easiest option. I mean, look at everyone else. Look at Kristen Cole. Look at Jaime and Cersei. Look at...
Yeah, there you go. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's exactly how to deal when you become a queen is, oh, well, I can just put the dude that I want to fuck in the Kingsguard.
It's true. Or look at, look at Rael and Bonifer Hasty. Sometimes you have to give that dude up, and then he's just left carrying a torch for you forever.
Yikes.
But anyway, so yeah, that pretty much sums that one up.
Yeah. And interruption, I just realized we totally forgot another honorable mention that I'm gonna just name drop real quick. Dunk and Tanselle Too Tall. Hello?
That's true.
I can't believe I didn't even think about that.
They can look over a raging crowd of people and see each other across a market square, and their eyes would meet as if they would be alone together. Yep. And also he broke an asshole's fingers for her, so can't go wrong.
Yeah, no, really romantic, and she gave him the shield for free, so... God, I really do hope they fucked.
I mean, is not the major theme of the Dunk and Egg stories, and I ask you as someone who's done a lot of content on the Dunk and Egg stories, is not the major theme that everyone wants to fuck Dunk all the time?
Yeah, and he's just fucking oblivious.
And that's the great thing. From the Sworn Sword to Daemon 2, like he doesn't realize, and it's so adorable. At some point he figures it out because he fathers the line of Hodor and Brienne and the Cleganes, but yeah. At first,
God,
he's so
that's
oblivious.
dunk fucked. As Eliana, who was on with the Dunk and Egg for Hedge Night, as we discussed, dunk fucked, dude.
That's the stuff.
I get that though. You know, like you wake up one day and you like realize, wow, I'm not ugly. I'm not a big lump of ugly uselessness, and then you just fuck. Like I get it. That's life. Dunk fucked. Quicker honorable mention. It won't be too much. I'm gonna read the quote with it for sure. But my other honorable mention is the Night's King and his corpse bride queen. It's Bran 4 in Storm of Swords, which is God, such a strong Bran book. Eliana and I were just discussing the other day. We don't understand how people don't like Bran chapters. Like, you're stupid if you don't like.
They're so good and full of weird imagery and nature stuff and magic and history. Like Bran Storm of Swords chapters, they're all about like this, all about the past, the Night of the Laughing Tree, and Queen Alysanne visiting, and the Night Fort. And I know we interrupted you, but it's true. You're correct.
No, you're fine. Definitely interrupt me if you're going to talk about Bran chapters. Like, that is the only time you're allowed to interrupt me, is if you want to talk about Bran chapters.
I'm making a note of this, ma'am.
Jot that down. As the sun began to set, the shadows of the towers lengthened and the wind blew harder, sending gusts of dry, dead leaves rattling through the yards. The gathering gloom put Bran in mind of another of Old Nan's stories, the tale of Night's King. He had been the 13th man to lead the Night's Watch, she said, a warrior who knew no fear. And that was the fault in him, she would add, for all men must know fear. A woman was his downfall, a woman glimpsed from atop the wall, with skin as white as the moon and eyes like blue stars. Fearing nothing, he chased her and caught her and loved her, though her skin was cold as ice, and when he gave his seed to her, he gave his soul as well.
It's true love, folks. You can't get better than that.
So sexy. It would be great porn.
That's true. I wonder if that's been done.
Oh my god, I'm not jotting it down for like when we're poor.
If not, we have to take care of that immediately. Yep.
We're about to topple the market on Night King and Corpse Bride Queen porn.
My parents are going to finally be proud of me.
They'll be like, Emmett, you banged a girl.
We knew you could do it, buddy.
Burn. Just kidding. Oh, wait, those are the same thing in Quentin's plot.
You just had to.
I did. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Yeah.
Hey, at least you're not the people who insist he's still alive. I want to burn them alive, ironically enough.
Oh. Again.
Burn. Yep.
The same thing. Good call. Back to the Night's King porn. No, I'm just kidding. Back to the top 5.
By all means.
So, if you guys want to crowdfund that, if you're listening and you want to crowdfund that, it's not going to happen. Cough, wink, DM me, cough.
www.nightsking.goffuckme.com.
You're very well versed in this, Emmett. Thanks for
I live to serve. Volatile Hireless. Anywho, which of our number 5 should we handle first?
Well, I think we better get it out of the way now. Stavos, I feel like, is important here.
Go for it.
I really do like it more on a platonic level. I don't believe that Stannis is going to be rawing Davos like all day long, okay? It is a very cool relationship, and it's just like Stannis doesn't love things except for like his burb. Oh, I should have asked if that was one of yours. I would have been wrong, but Proudwing and Stannis.
I'm kind of disappointed, folks, that she did not guess Stannis Proudwing. I kind of feel like we have to have a discussion about this later on in privacy.
Yeah, that'll be off the air for sure.
About the fact that you didn't guess this. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't on your list, though, so I feel like it really isn't that big of a problem.
But you didn't know that.
I mean, I do now.
It's true. She's got me, folks.
Listen, don't gaslight me about Stannis and Proudwing, okay? I don't need your shit.
Yes, ma'am.
I just love the dynamic of Stannis and Davos, and I love when, I mean, obviously, we know what the best quote to portray this relationship is, which is, "I am lowborn," Davos reminded him, "an up-jumped smuggler. Your lords will never obey me. Then we will make new lords." Whoa.
It is one of my
Shiver.
favorite scenes in any book ever. It's so perfect and pure and brings out the best in both of them. It's wonderful. And I would not object if they kissed at that moment.
I wanted at least a nice bro kiss. Like, then we will make new lords. Who says that? That is like sexual.
Pretty much. It's the sexiest revolution known to man.
God.
Well, but I'm surprised you didn't bring up the quote where Davos offers Stannis his tongue. It is I am your man, your grace, so it is your tongue to do with as you please.
You're the
right
one
there.
that brought the quote up, not me. So I'd like to just you might say you think it's platonic, but you're the one going about Davos's tongue being Stannis's right now, and I'm not. So I just want to make sure where we sit on this one. Are you Stavos, pro Stavos, or like no Stavos?
Here's what I would say. It's known that George R. R. Martin is not a fan of fanfic, which I assume includes /fic. However, I feel that's hypocritical for many reasons, one of which is that line. There's no way, dude, you could have possibly written that line and not known what people were going to do with it. That's like, if I didn't know better, I would say that was the author deliberately trying to create gay /fic between Stannis and Davos.
Would you say George R. R. Martin is queer baiting us?
I might make that incendiary statement. I demand to be judged only on that statement henceforth.
I'll jot that down.
Go to town on me, social media. No, I love the Stannis and Davos relationship more than almost anything in life. It's really perfect. It brings the best out in both of them. Like I said, they have so much ideologically in common. And you know that Stannis makes Davos's hand is such a wonderful, compelling, sweet, generous thing. But yeah, for me, you know, Stannis' sexuality for me is Melisandre focused above all else, and for me, that's how I've always framed the character. So it's always been something I've appreciated from the outside, rather than taking part in myself. But I respect it. I give it a firm handshake and stare it right in the eye when I pass it in the street.
Question for you then. So, just following on the Stannis and Mel train. So yes, but like, how do you think he sees that like relationship in his mind with Melisandre? Is it more that he's fucking for power / insurance over kingship and the Red Lord, or like that's why he bangs Melisandre? Or do you really think that he's actually like sexually attracted to her? Because I feel also like in the books he gets really annoyed with her a lot more often.
My guess is that Stannis thought of himself as asexual before Melisandre came along, and that she is perhaps changing his definition thereof. I mean, Stannis has such a push and pull relationship with intimacy. He rejects it so consistently, yet there are so many moments in the text where he clearly wants it more than anything else, with his brothers, with Davos, with Jon, with, you know, the people in general who he very clearly wants to love him, even though they refuse to. I've always thought that Melisandre got under Stannis' defenses by just immediately assuming an intimacy with him, and that's almost like a drug for him that he hasn't been able to let go of. That this is someone who not only knows him, but wants to know him and tells him he's worth knowing and worth talking to. And yes, you do matter. And I feel like Stannis' sexual relationship with her is kind of inextricable from that.
I absolutely agree with that at the end, because it's interesting because it's like he wants all the intimacy, but he feels like he's wronged pretty much in every level of his life, and he doesn't want to put the work in anymore to do it. And Melisandre just shows up and does it. And obviously we know her motives are different also for the said sexcapades, but it's interesting that like she just immediately acts familiar, and he's just like, okay, well, that's kind of what I wanted, and I don't want to do the work for it, so that works.
Pretty much. I mean, Stannis learned the lesson with Proudwing that if you put yourself out there and risk yourself, you're just going to get mocked, and you're just going to get told you're wrong. So maybe the thing to do is wait till someone comes to you and just reserve what you got and keep it in yourself and just like sit there on your little rock. And, you know, Melisandre, you know, I think she recognized that immediately and was able to play him perfectly. And I think that's what changed the relationship for him. But I still think he's obviously in huge denial about what that relationship means and why he's doing it. So, you know, I think Stannis' relationship with Melisandre is, I don't want to say it's worse than actually burning people alive, but it is kind of the most wretched, petty part of his character. Cheating on his wife, and he's doing it for reasons of self-gratification, ultimately. And I suspect that if you look at Martin's comments, he clearly is very fond of Stannis and considers him on a higher plane than the rest of the competing kings. So I've always thought that maybe one of the reasons Martin, unlike the show, kept the Stannis and Melisandre relationship off screen is because it does not make Stannis look good at all. And Martin, as a Stannis fan, was kind of like, you know, if I'm going to try to keep the readers invested in this guy in the least, maybe not show this part. And the show, which was never trying to get you to invest in Stannis, just showed that scene because they didn't have that. They weren't trying to keep you on board with this guy at all.
Yeah, I feel like maybe Martin also thought, ooh, making him not likable now is not going to help the effect when he's really not likable later.
Well, I mean, it's a very fine line Martin's going with Stannis, because you can clearly, from Clash of Kings and Storm of Swords forward, you can see him going, all right, I'm leading this guy to this unbearably stomach-churning moment, but I don't want this moment to just be like, oh, well, look at that asshole killing his daughter. I want people to have their heart in their throats. I want people to be going, no, Stannis, don't do it. And, like, people aren't going to be doing that if they don't give a shit about the guy at all. Like, you have to bring people in on why the guy is doing what he's doing and what he believes and what his best self possibly is. Otherwise, it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's just Stannis being mean because Stannis is mean, and there you go. I mean, he's got a little more on the line than that. And it's, yeah, for me, that's why I love the Stannis and Davos relationship so clearly, because Stannis looks to Davos to, like, it's not just that Davos brings the best out of Stannis, it's that Stannis keeps Davos around for exactly that reason. You can see it in Storm of Swords. Stannis brings Davos out of the cell and makes him his hand, because, like, you know who I am, right? You know the best part of me. I make my best decisions regarding you. Whatever it is with you, Onion Knight, you seem to understand that I have some worth in me. So I'm going to keep you around for exactly that reason, because everything else in my life makes me feel worthless. So that relationship is very sweet and wonderful that way. And the Stannis-Mel relationship, yeah, I think on the whole, there's a sexiness to it in that it's a guy who doesn't have sex kind of giving way to his animal instincts. There's something sexual about that and interesting, but it's kind of petty and tawdry and sad. So that's not something I ship on the whole.
Honorable nod right there to one of our followers, Saren at Agenka.
Yes.
She her favorite crack ship with Stannis is Stannis and Asha. And she's really hoping to see Stannis go ham on Asha in TWOW. I don't know if it's going to happen, but for her sake, I hope she gets what she wants, because she says that their sexual tension is very peak. I could see it from the sample chapters, but I could see them.
I could see them hate fucking to a certain extent, like yelling at each other with their noses like an inch apart until they start kissing savagely. Maybe.
I mean, that's what she's into. That's literally
that is what as we will get into. That is what she is into. So yeah, all right, I can see this. That's fair.
It's fair. It's fair.
Saren's a good egg.
She is a good egg. She's a good she's always listening and giving us her best takes, like how she wants to deep throat dunk for 8 years, or like get fisted by Victarion's flaming arm. So
yeah, that's sweet.
She's a good girl. She's anyways, darling.
Yes,
give me your number 5, baby. Tell it to me.
Roose Bolton and Fat Walder Frey. Okay. So
okay.
So let's all put ourselves in the mindset once more of going our first time through Theon's 3rd chapter in A Dance with Dragons. This is the chapter that's set at Barrowton. Roose and Ramsay are arguing. The Freys have vanished from White Harbor, and then Theon sets up with Roose on this horse ride through town to meet Barbary Dustin. Now, Roose Bolton, up to this point, has been presented as one of the least humanized villains in the series. He is this weird, leechy ghost man with the white eyes who, like, is talking at a murmur and seems like a vampire, and, like, he's just like, everyone points out that he's so much scarier than everyone else around him, but no one can quite say why. He's just inherently weird and off-putting and scary. Like, that's who he was in Clash of Kings when we first met him via Arya and Harrenhal. That's who he was when we met him again via Jaime when he ends up in Harrenhal. I mean, the fact that we first know Roose in Harrenhal is indicative of itself. Harrenhal is a super spooky, scary place full of ghosts, and Roose fits in just fine. And then we get this conversation with Theon and Barrington, where they're just talking about a bunch of different stuff. And then out of nowhere, Roose brings up his wife, Walder Frey, and says, quote, "I've become oddly fond of my fat little wife. The two before her never made a sound in bed, but this one squeals and shudders. I find that quite endearing." And everyone just went, what? What was that? It's great. It comes out of completely nowhere. It's not remotely set up with the character at all. It's never brought up again. It's just unbelievably freaking adorable that this weird, soulless, evil vampire man has managed to find adorable stepdad love at some point in his life, and he never expected it. And that fat Walder Frey is just like, you know what? I get off on Roose Bolton. Judge me, at me. Quote, fat Walder Frey.
Quote, fat Walder Frey. Well, and like, it is really weird because it's like a really weirdly belated ad of humanity. Like, I mean, obviously we aren't going to believe that Roose Bolton, who helped orchestrate the Red Wedding, you know, and like stuck the dagger in Rob, like, we're not going to pretend he's like a human, obviously, like the guy with the weird eyeballs and like leeches himself and talks in a very low, whispery voice. But,
yeah,
like,
he's a villain of like a weird old-timey movie or a serial or a comic book or something. He's barely a person.
But he definitely fucks, apparently.
Apparently, and he says he's become odd. What I love about it is he's become oddly fond. Like, he wasn't expecting this relationship to mean anything to him, and now suddenly it means quite a deal to him. And that's just, it's so strange.
He comes to bed and he like gets in it, and it's just this like soft, fleshy woman, and he's all sharp bones and corners and leeches and like blood and vampire-y, and like he just like comes to bed and like bangs out this soft, nice chick, and he's like, wow, how did this happen? This fat, sweet lady. And then he's just like, that was nice, I guess. And then he goes to bed and he wakes up and he's like,
Exactly. Like Roose Bolton made a decision as a child, like, I don't feel feelings and that's just fine. I'm going to go ahead and just devour as much of the world as I can. And now, out of nowhere, after he's already achieved his point in the story-ended life with the Red Wedding, it's like he's found this new lease in life. And it doesn't need to happen. Part of why I love it so much is that George Martin could have easily cut that out, or his editor could have cut that out. It has no impact on the plot. It doesn't come up ever again, but it just exists for itself, and you're turned to your head, you decide and go, oh, that's so weird and so singular.
Roose could like understand or have an emotion, and that like for example, then he's just so blasé. He's like, oh yeah, Walda's pregnant, but you know, Ramsay's gonna kill that kid, and I mean, she'll be sad when he kills the next one too. And he's like really blasé about it, but he like immediately he acts like he knows. He's like, oh yeah, my wife Walda, she's gonna be really upset when her kid dies, but
humans work like that. That's the fun of Roose. It's like you have all these other villains in the story where like Martin wants you to understand their motivations. He's like, okay, you know, Tywin, like every villain has their primal scene that explains who they are. Tywin, it's his dad being laughed at. That explains pretty much everything Tywin does. Littlefinger, it's that duel with Brandon and looking at Cat as the blood flowed over his ribs. That explains everything he does. It doesn't justify, but explains who he is as a person.
Nice clarification.
Oh, okay, totally. I'm not trying to say like, oh, it's okay, Tywin and Littlefinger, I get you. But like Martin wants to psychologically to understand this is what happened, and this is everything that came from that. Like Varys, like the voice that spoke from the flames, and you know, being horribly treated. Like that explains exactly where he goes from. Even Ramsay, when we see Roose and Ramsay interact, and we see Roose go, "Do what I say before I regret the day I raped your mother." It's like, oh, okay, that's why Ramsay is so fucked up about Bolton versus Snow. That makes sense now. Roose is even Euron gets the scene where he talks about, and when I was a boy, I dreamt that I could fly, and then the Maester said I couldn't. It's like, now I understand why you have this insane thirst and ambition inside of you. Roose is the one that gets nothing like that. There is nothing for Roose that explains the way that he is. Roose is just weird. And like you said, then as soon as he's talking about how much he likes Walt, he's like, yeah, and then Ramsay will kill my kids. I don't care. Whatever. it's like nothing about Roose's motivations or backstory really add up at all to a coherent person, and somehow that's okay because he's consistently entertaining and compelling in his own regard, and you just never know what he's going to do. And I just love that. And I love that the most inhuman, bloodless character in the story is the one that ends up with something resembling a happy, sexy marriage that's so perverse and so bizarre that I just love it to death.
Yeah, it's a very I don't want to call it soft because it's not soft. I mean, she's soft. Roose isn't, but it's interesting. It's definitely like it's almost like obviously it's too little too late for humanization of Roose Bolton, but it's kind of like, oh, okay, good for you, Roose.
It's just another layer of weird.
It's weird. But Roose Bolton's weird.
Roose Bolton's super weird. But tell me your thoughts on Jaime and Brienne.
My number 4, Jaime and Brienne. So I feel like it's a very common ship, obviously, to like because it's a very beautifully set up ship. George has definitely, I mean, he plays with the Beauty and the Beast dynamic, which we're going to get to as we get to spot number 2. We'll get to Sansa for me later. And it's a very beautiful dynamic. George actually, worked on a Beast show. He loves Beauty and the Beast. It's like his thing. So Jaime Lannister, this soiled knight who, has just fucked up but also been seen and no one will listen to him about like how he actually isn't a bad dude. And Brienne of Tarth, who has had this whole life of just like not getting to be herself or being made uncomfortable for being herself, being looked down upon for trying to go her own way in life by family, by other people, especially dudes, been looked at as ugly her whole life. It's just these people, like Jaime's been looked at as ugly via personality his whole life, but beautiful on the outside, and she's been looked at as like this sad sap of an ugly woman. And just like this beautiful, just like joining of characters, and she makes him better, and like he doesn't do shit for her, but he gives her a sword, I guess, but makes him better, which is any girl. Okay, listen, let me break this down for you. Every girl can tell you we just want to fix shit. Okay, we can't help the way we are. We want to fix you. When I look at big giant man babies like Sandor Clegane or Jaime Lannister, like I just want to kiss them on the head and say it's gonna be okay, big man baby. I'm gonna make things better for you, and I can't do that to them. Okay, it's very hard because I want to do that. So anyway,
yes. Go ahead and fix me. Go ahead.
So my favorite, a lot of people like the "I dreamed of you," like when he saves Brienne from the bear pit. People love the quote when she's like, "But Sir Jaime, like you were well away. Why did you come back?" And he's like, "I dreamed of you." And people are like, "Oh my god, that's so romantic." But I, an intellectual,
yes, ma'am.
I prefer a different quote, which is when she's not even involved in the quote. It's right before he saves her from the bear pit. And he goes up, to Vargo and goes to the group and he says, "I'll pay her bloody ransom. Gold, sapphires, whatever you want. Pull her out of there." And they go, "You want her? Go get her." And the next line just says, "So he did." And I'm sorry, but if that's not the most romantic ass line in any story ever, "You want her? Go get her." "So he did." And then it like has him climbing in the bear pit and like taking action and getting her out of there. Like, I'm sorry, that's any girl is just like sploosh, like wet. Like that's the most beautiful. I'm sorry, but he wants her. That's Jaime wants the bee. Is what I'm saying. That was right there. That was like the most like holy shit, they're in love moment I've ever seen in a story. So
amen, sister.
I feel like it's a very mainstream ship. Everyone ships Jaime Brienne, but I mean it's beautiful. It's a beautiful echo. George, as I said, like we know he loves Beauty and the Beast. We know he plays with those dynamics. We see it in Sansa and we see it in Jaime and Brienne. And it's just a beautiful kind of inverted idea with Jaime and Brienne of the Beauty and the Beast,
Perfectly said. I agree. I love that Jaime and Brienne get the sense that they're the same person at different points in their lives. I love that Jaime looks at Brienne and thinks, "Okay, this is how I used to think about knighthood and about honor and about doing the right thing." And then Brienne starts to look at Jaime as, because once Brienne has lost both Renly and Catelyn, she starts to get Jaime a little more and starts to look at him like, "Okay, this is if I lost a bunch more people and they started to let me down and no one understood why, yeah, okay, I start to understand why I would think like this. And I love that dynamic develops between them, where they realize that they're on the same spectrum instead of enemies. They're not the same thing, but they start to realize how much they have in common. And it develops really well organically, I think. And I love how they think about each other in Feast after they're separated. They spend Storm together, of course, but then they're always constantly thinking about each other as, what would this Sir Hyle couldn't affect me as much as Sir Jaime did, or Jaime's comparing his own actions to Brienne, and that's just great. I love that instinctive, they're not with each other, but they're always acting as if the other person is just over their shoulder, judging what they're about to do, so I better do it right, or they're going to think, that's great. That's good dramatic stuff. I love that. It's the same way that Theon, as much as he tells himself he hates the Starks and hates Ned Stark, and I was a prisoner, Theon is always comparing himself to Ned and always thinking, what would Ned Stark do? And, oh, Ned wouldn't approve of that. And it's like, yeah, because he was actually your dad, the closest thing you have to it. And, yeah, same deal with Jaime and Brienne. As much as Jaime tells himself, stupid, stubborn, ugly wench, I hate her so much. And as much as Brienne starts off hating Jaime more than anybody, they start to realize that ultimately Jaime wants to be like Brienne, and Brienne realizes how easily she could end up like Jaime. And that dynamic is a beautiful thing. And, and the language in which it's written, like you say, is so romantic. You want her to go and get it, or just the way their duel is described with, like, the sword touching on her thigh, and she looked as if we were caught fucking instead of fighting, and, like, all that stuff is just, the language around it is so romantic. You gotta love that.
Absolutely. And I think that's also, especially the romantic language, is like, it makes you think of, when you hold memories about people or about things, you remember little, like, reveries like that. You remember little, like, oh, like, they touched my face and they said this thing, and I'll remember that line of text for the rest of my life, kind of thing. That kind of shebang, like, you think those kind of things, so it's very real. It's a very realistic touch, and I think, pretty sure, like, it's gonna end in tragedy. It is a Song of Ice and Fire, and I don't think that they're gonna be together, obviously, in the end, which is sad, because they both have affected the other so much, and that's, like, what their plots are about. You just, Jaime, especially with identity being such a big theme, and Jaime being the Kingslayer, and when he collapses in her arms and she yells the Kingslayer, and he yells, my name's Jaime. And that's a huge, like, that moment, that's a pivotal turning moment for both of their arcs, especially Jaime's. That's the first time he's ever gotten to rehash all of the trauma that he went through in doing the right thing.
He didn't tell Cersei. He didn't tell Tyrion. Like, he told this ultimately random person who he convinces himself he hates. And he does it because he sees himself in her, and because for some reason, of all the people who hate him, she's the one he wants to prove wrong. She's the one he wants to convince, and
she gets under his skin.
She gets under his skin, and he gets under her skin. And that's a great thing that they bring out each other. But I agree, as far as the ending in tragedy goes. Dunk did not, retire to a nice cottage with Tanselle Too-Tall for the rest of his days. As much as I would like that to happen, Dunk died in a fire, being awesome.
Dunk died saving people from the fires, and obviously we could see an echo of that. Who knows? I know you and I have discussed this a couple times, but, like, when Cersei's going to die, it's just so, like, we don't know when it's going to happen. It could happen. She could, retreat to Casterly and Jaime shows up then. I don't think she'll be in King's Landing at all. Really interesting. John on Twitter actually was talking to me once, and I don't personally agree, but I think it's a really cool idea and how he got there thought-wise. But he was talking about how he would love for it to be like her caravan on the way back to Casterly Rock from King's Landing gets ambushed, like, out in the Westerlands on her way back, and, like, she's in the middle of a field. Like, no, she can't call upon, like, anything in her life. She can't call upon, like, excessive banners. She can't call upon her money. She can't call upon her beauty. She is just, like, in the middle of a fucking field, and Jaime's horde meets up with her, and, like, that's how it goes. I don't think that'll happen, but it's a cool idea what he said, and that always sticks to me, of stripping down her character and her luxuries. But Brienne is very much like a rebound for Jaime, and by rebound I mean one of them's going to die. But as like the plot progresses with them too, with Jaime and Brienne, something interesting to note is like he starts thinking more kindly on her and starts complimenting certain parts of her. Like he notices in the end of Storm, like he'll notice her eyes. He talks about how astonishingly blue and beautiful her eyes are, and like he starts noticing all these little things. And like even when he's apart from her in his POVs, he thinks about her. Which like for Brienne to think about him, we're like, we know. Okay, we get it. You're wet for Sir Jaime. And everyone makes fun of her for it. And she's like, no, I'm not. But like in our heads, we're like, yes, you are. And then like Jaime, though, you know, when he thinks about it, that's a big deal because when you have an emotionally unresponsive man that you're into and you know there's an inkling in there that he's into you too, but it's not coming to the brim or the surface, you know, like that's a big thing. That's like that's a sign. We got to analyze that, girls. Like that's how it works in real life. So, I mean, like, I understand Brienne is what I'm saying.
Well, I think that's something George Martin does so well. It's something he does, I think, particularly well with both Jaime and Stannis, to bring it back, because he's like, you know, if I make this character restrained and reserved and instinctively assholish 95% of the time as a defense mechanism, the 5% of the time they let someone in and they actually act emotionally vulnerable, that's going to hit like a hurricane because of what a contrast it is, and people are going to really respond to that. And I think he nailed it with both those characters in very different ways, but in both cases you have a character designed to bring it out of them. You have Davos designed to bring that out of Stannis, and you have Brienne designed to bring that out of Jaime.
What I'm trying to tell you is that I think I'm a Jaime Brienne shipper now as of this conversation. I didn't realize how much I loved it until like talking about it, and I'm just sitting here and I'm like, oh, go get her.
For full disclosure, as King Stannis's hand, I have it in me to hate Jaime Lannister. It's just.
Oh no! Like she deserves better, and Brienne is such a pure fucking soul. I mean, she's dunk less simple, but she's dunk with a little more education, and she is so good and pure and such a good girl, and you want good things for her. Any boy that talks to her, I'm like, get away from Brienne of Tarth. Like, you do not deserve to even breathe the same air as her. However, Jaime, like, and you and I have had this, we could go on for hours about his redemption arc. It's not a redemption arc.
I'm glad he's learning better. He's still kind of working for the wrong people, doing a lot of the wrong things, not acknowledge, you know, it's
like, good for you. You didn't want, like, fuck your sister anymore. Like, you decide, you know what, I'm going to stop fucking my sister. That's great. But you're still, like, out in the Riverlands, like, look, Edamir, this sucks. I have to come to you right now and do this. But here's the deal. Because of my allegiance, you have to fucking listen to what I say. If you don't, I'm going to make your life hell anyways. Like, he's still bullying.
He's a lawyer for the mob. He's a nice, friendly face on top of a corrupt, illegitimate, blood-soaked organization. Like, yeah, I'm very glad that he punched Ryman Frey in the face. That's nice. You know what he was there to do? Hand the castle to his family. That's his job. Like, ultimately, the fact that he hit the dude is an insignificant detail next to the functional reality of why he's there. He's there to hand out things to the guys who did the Red Wedding. That's his job.
No, it's just like the stupid show Danny quote of I'm not gonna whatever the wheel, I'm gonna break the wheel. And it's like, you are the wheel, bitch. Like, he is the wheel.
I hate that
He's
quote
the wheel.
so much. Yeah. The most self-important, oh yeah, I'm making a statement. It's like something somebody would say in Independence Day. It's like it's a meaningless line that should be on posters.
It's literally a line made for the YouTube trailer. Like,
that's all it is. Like, that's a lot. And that's a lot of the show at this point. I know it's a divergence, but I've always felt that about Cersei in the show at this point. Like, Cersei is sold by the marketing and the trailers as this crazy, evil, out of control.
Enemies to our west, enemies to the south.
I'm going to kill them all. But if you actually watch the show, it's mostly Cersei just insisting over and over she's going to protect her children, and then once every 7 episodes she does something crazy. There's not much actually there. They just sell it as these one little moments. Anywho.
Which is such utter bullshit, because she at least has, like, sex in the books, you know what I mean? I'm just kidding. She has other shit, too. Like, crazier shit. Stupider shit, to be fair.
I love Cersei in the books because it's just a joke. It's so funny that this insane person is in charge and no one's stopping her. And she's just filling the government with idiots. And it's just the funniest thing about Cersei.
Wait, hold on. Babe, can we back up for a second? Hold on. Did you just say that the best part about Cersei is that she's just, like, queen pretty much of everything, and she's just like doing everything wrong, and she's just filling the government with idiots, and every day is a new fucking like scandal.
It's almost like that's reality, and we reacted to that in A Feast for Crows like, this is just unrealistic. How is Cersei so dumb? People in the fandom said. This is just takes us so out of the story, and now we're living that. So maybe let's revisit these chapters.
Like, I'm waiting till next week to be like, number 45, Arms the Faith. Like,
pretty much. I mean, that's the fun of Cersei, that she's wanted to be in charge her whole life, and then she gets it, and she has no idea what it is she wanted to do with it, and it doesn't make her happy at all, because she was chasing Tywin, and Tywin was never happy. This whole family, man, the Lannisters are just so screwed up.
They're all fucked. They're so fucked beyond, like, I mean, like, Tyrion might have a little good left to be able to get. Like, he could grasp.
No, well, Tyrion's got a tiny little kernel of, like, I might save the world at the absolute end. Like, the last 0.5% of the story. Like, literally, the last 10 pages of the book, Tyrion does the right thing. Up until then, it's going to be a lot of crazy nonsense he does, and he's the best one. They're Greek tragic. Like, of course, you know, they do nice things so you feel bad when they ultimately go down. No, I mean, Jaime is obviously doing better than he was in the first book, when he was just a mustache-twirling villain. But he's progressed to the point of, he's gone from being a supervillain to merely corrupt. That's his progress. Like, he's...
To be fair, though, like, he's made the quickest so he has made the most progress in the smallest amount of time that we've seen him on screen, like getting his thoughts, compared to where Tyrion has fallen all of a sudden, and he's kind of really dark. You know what I mean? So, like, yeah,
that's absolutely
he's the
true.
Good one, but Jaime is God damn it, now I'm contradicting myself. I'm not trying to say that Jaime's like on a redemption arc. He's not, but he's made the most progress. Like, because I mean, he pushed a fucking kid. He pushed Brandon Stark out of a fucking tower in Winterfell at his own grounds. Like, you think people are surprised the Lannisters helped orchestrate the Red Wedding? Hello, Jaime pushed a kid within the first handful of chapters out of a tower in a Game of Thrones. Like, that's pretty bad. That's like, I don't really like kids a lot. Like, sometimes, like, if they're not mine, I don't have any, thank God. But
you wouldn't push them out a window. I understand this.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, they suck, but I wouldn't push them out a window.
For me, like, when I think of Jaime, the problem is there's this moment in the first book when he orders Ned's men killed on the street, and like Martin describes it as his like his smile like flashes in the rain. There's this very distinct image, and like that burned into my brain of this dude, and it's like that's not fair. But Martin did write it that way, and you know, I get what his overall project with Jaime is. I appreciate it, but for me personally, it just was too much right away, and I hated him too strongly. And the journey back is always going to be a little filtered for me through that, where I'm like, yeah, that's nice, but you still smiled as poor sweet Jory Cassell got a dagger shoved through his face. So. Kind of fuck you. This whole war is your fault. So also kind of fuck you.
And then it makes me think about Beth. All alone in Winterfell, and then Ramsay comes and takes everyone, and now she's maybe in the dungeons of the Dreadfort. Like,
we're sad people, folks. What are you gonna do with us?
I didn't mean to get sad, but now I'm thinking about Beth Castle and how she used to listen to Sansa and Arya and regard them as if they were the most important girls in the entire universe, and those were the girls she should strive to be like. Oh.
And then Theon put a noose around her neck, because fuck Theon.
I mean, fuck my son. Yes. I hate him so much, but I love him.
I'm writing a whole series now about how Theon didn't deserve anything that's happening to him in Ramsay's hands, but he's still a fucking horrible human being.
Baby, I think it was your turn.
Number 4. My number 4 would be Jon and Val. All right. So.
Lonely, lovely, lethal.
She summed it up, folks, but I will try to elucidate. Jon Snow starts out as a really boring character.
Can we wait? Can we call him Porridge?
We can call him Porridge. Porridge Snow starts off as a really boring breakfast food.
But then he gets the spice he needs.
In the first book, he is by far the least interesting point of view character. George Martin clearly does not have a handle on him as a character yet. He's giving him sort of traits and qualities that do not show up in the later books. He's very stiffly written. His relationships are very forced. A lot of his first book chapters feel like sub-Tamora Pierce, as I've said before, in terms of coming-of-age stories and fantasy novels. It feels YA, and not in a good way. And not because Martin is a bad writer. It's because I sincerely think he did not know what he was doing with Jon Snow yet, emotionally as a character, in the way that he very clearly did know what he was doing with Dany and Tyrion and Sansa as characters. Or Catelyn. He clearly, I know what I'm doing with Catelyn immediately. But Johnny was like, I don't know who he is yet.
And that's really interesting, since he's like the savior and he's the child of like the people that made this possible. Like, that's kind of like George, really? Like, he could have actually changed the parentage if he wanted. I don't think he would have, but he could have.
One of the things I love about A Song of Ice and Fire, in a weird way, is that Martin almost feels like he keeps getting ahead of himself with the story, which is why it's taking so long. He keeps setting up ideas and characters and traits and elements that he doesn't really fully understand yet, and keeps like, I'll figure this out. I'll work this out later. And part of me really loves that. There's a huge amount of risk in what he does. And you can tell with Jon that, like, yeah, the backstory is all there, but I don't think he had a handle on him as a character until you get him beyond the wall, interacting with the wildlings. And that is where you start seeing, okay, here is where he's going with Jon Snow, the character. He's going to have Jon Snow be the one who understands this is not just an army. This is a whole people brought together. And that's the heart of Jon Snow's character, is that he's the one who sees humanity in the wildlings and devotes himself to bringing that forward. And what I find really interesting about that in terms of shipping, the subject under discussion today, is that Jon at first develops these really destructive, deceit-laden relationships with the wildlings, relationships that cannot last in the realms of both romance and fatherhood, paternal relationships. And Jon is, of course, always looking for a father figure to replace Ned Stark. That is the central drive of Jon Snow's character. It holds from Tyrion to Benjen to Donal Noy to Maester Aemon to Lord Commander Mormont to Mance to Tormund to Stannis. Everyone Jon Snow interacts with is like, are you my dad? Can you give me the love that Ned Stark failed to give me? And that's, of course, ultimately leading to the revelation of Rhaegar as his actual biological father. And Jon develops one of his many deceitful, not quite the same father relationships with Mance, and he develops this very dishonest relationship with Ygritte, a very hot, sexy, sweet relationship in many respects.
That was his first real relationship.
Quite literally a coming-of-age relationship, yes. But it's built on lies, ultimately. He's lying to Ygritte. Ygritte's like lying to Mance about why he's there and kind of forcing him into a sexual relationship. I love it in a lot of ways. I love both of them, but it's not the healthiest relationship. It's not a long-term relationship, and they both know it. They both know it's going to end with one of them dead. That they're ultimately, like, Ygritte's not stupid. Ygritte knows that Jon is not genuinely with them. Ygritte knows that Jon is a spy. You can tell at several moments that Ygritte understands what's going on, but she really likes him, and she wants something out of this life, and she wants to believe this can work. And for me, like, ultimately, that's what, a long lead into why I ship Jon and Val, is because I think what you get ultimately in Dance with Dragons is Jon forging, or trying to forge, relationships that actually could work with the wildlings. And that's part of his arc as Lord Commander and trying to integrate with them with the realm. That he develops his father relationship with Tormund Giantsbane, which, as well as being just freaking adorable, because it's Tormund, but that is genuinely a working relationship, and that they both clearly love each other and respect each other, and they make it work. Like, Mance, much as I love Mance, was never actually going to make this work, because Mance could never bend the knee, and he could never actually bring the wildlings through the wall, because his plan was, I'm going to take over part of the North, and the North is just going to be cool with that. That's just what's going to happen. And Tormund is the one who realized, there needs to be some give and take for this ever to work if we're going to stand together against the others, and that only happens because Jon and Tormund have a great relationship. And why I ship Jon and Val is because Jon and Val develop this really kind of organic respect and sweetness for each other that ends up helping the overall project of integration, and ends up helping Jon as Lord Commander, and they can work together in the way that Jon and Ygritte, part of the sexiness I get is that it's doomed. I get that's why part of why one would ship it is because it's never going to work, and there's a heart in your throat element to that. I do get it. But I shipped Jon and Val because part of me is like, no, we should want better for Jon. We should want better for the protagonist of this huge fantasy epic. We should want him to develop relationships that can last. And the Jon and Val, they do interact as better as human beings than Jon and Ygritte ultimately do. Quote, Val kissed him lightly on the cheek. You have my thanks, Lord Snow, for the half-blind horse, the salt cod, the free air, for hope. And that's more than Jon and Ygritte ever really had, is hope. They had the moment with each other, as sexy as it was. They never had the long term. They never had the future for each other's peoples. They were doomed. And I like this because it's not. Now tell me why I'm vanilla and stupid and wrong, please. I eagerly await you.
I respect that you eagerly await me. You eagerly await me.
Oh, folks. Do you know that Chloe Ketchum does stand-up comedy?
I am pretty clever. So I appreciate that you eagerly await me. But I respect that. I agree with a lot of things. I was telling someone today that when I first started reading the books and when I first started watching the show, it's a big confession. Are you ready? I don't know.
You hate Jon Snow. Just say it.
No, I don't hate him. I think he's boring in the first few books. Anyways, that's not the point. Listen, Porridge Snow is not the point right now. I just feel like if you're the kid of the savior, like you're the savior kid of like the people that basically made this series happen, like shouldn't you be more interesting? Anyways, what I'm saying is no, I respect that. I have two trains of thought. One, I thought a lot today about how Jon's choice of relationship is interesting and not quite. It's a rule of three, so like let's break this down right quick. That Ygritte could slit a man's throat or kiss his neck or whatever. Val, lonely, lovely, lethal. Okay, and then Daenerys, dragons. So that's
dragons are hard to beat.
But I'm just saying that's Jon Bad Boy Snow with his mommy issues is over there like gonna fuck a crazy chick every time. Wildling bitch, let's go. Wildling bitch, let's go. Chick with some dragons, that's close to Wildling. She has Wildling Horde. She has Dothraki. Like she's the leader. He has a type. Okay, first off.
True, and Dany also does have a type.
Pretty boys.
Dany has and anyone with a mustache to twirl, Dany has a particular thing for.
Kind of like Arianne with the pretty boy trope, how like she likes to fuck pretty boys, Daemon saying.
I would love to see Dany and Arianne get drunk together and host a podcast. I think they'd have a lot to talk about.
I'm into that. I think we should petition George to make it happen.
I think he can make it done. But no, it's true. I mean, what I think ultimately makes Jon an interesting character when you get to Dance, and Dance is really where Jon is an interesting character as Lord Commander, is he's got the struggle between his job and his love for his family. And that comes through really strongly in that book, as every decision and every scene is all about, is Jon the Lord Commander or is Jon a Stark of Winterfell? And which does he care about? And they're clearly in direct conflict with each other. And that's what starts making him it gives his emo-ness more gravity and more weight, because both those things are really important. And I like that his relationship with Val and Tormund kind of reflects that and ties into that Stannis offers him Val if he will take Winterfell. And Jon ultimately turns that down. He's got that moment where he looks at Val in the window and says, I'm not the man to get you out of there. And that was always such an interesting moment for me with Jon as character. It's like, it's him saying, I'm not going to be this particular kind of fantasy hero. Saving the princess in the tower is something that seems like I should do. It's kind of what my dad did, almost in reverse. But like, it's the thing I'm rejecting. My job is going to be this very kind of political, unsatisfying, bit by bit job. That's what I believe in. And that means giving up saving the princess and going home to the castle. And for me, that's an interesting moment for Jon. Like, it's the moment where he kind of grows up a bit. And I do like that dynamic. Whereas with Jon and Ygritte, as important as it is, it feels to me ultimately rooted in Jon being a teenager. And Jon being a teenager is the least interesting thing about it.
And so to explain what I was gonna say, I totally completely forgot until like just a second. Thankfully you reminded me. Ygritte was my favorite character. When I first started the show, I started the show in 2012, and it was 2011 and 2012 I started reading the books. And I was like, Ygritte is the shit. Ygritte is the shit. And I do costuming. Not everyone else might know, but I do costuming and I do cosplay, and like
immediately everybody I knew was like, do you watch Game of Thrones? You should cosplay that Sansa chick. And I was like, I hate her. She's so annoying. I don't want to cosplay her. Anyone that knows me or my works knows I love Sansa now. So this is a very funny story. But so I have first time through, we were just a bunch of people are discussing this on Twitter. I mean, you missed so much the first couple read throughs of A Song of Ice and Fire. And I didn't realize like right away, like I didn't know Ygritte was gonna die the first read through. I didn't know, and then I saw the episode and I read the book. I read the book first, and then I saw the episode, and it was just horrible both times. I was just like, "What? This is real? Ygritte dies? This is horse shit!" And I was so mad, but I didn't understand Sansa's characterization, and I didn't like want to. Kind of, I guess. Like I was very close minded to it. But Ygritte for me was like she was my favorite. I loved my favorite thing is her speech with the kneelers only have to kneel. That speech and like my land, like my daughter, my land, like my etc. Like it was just such a politically charged speech. It really encompasses the whole entire idea of wildlings and of like what they live like and how their lifestyle is above the wall and like how they see below the wall and how Southern politics look to them and how the Southerners see them. It was just such a big divide. And it's also the other thing that's so interesting from what you were just saying with Jon rejecting these ideas and things of like I can't save the princess in the tower. He's not going to be like Rhaegar. Rhaegar made mistakes. I think we don't know obviously the whole truth. We don't know. We know RLJ. We know Rhaegar and Lyanna definitely liked each other, loved each other, whatever, and they were together. Whether it was lust, whether it really was love, whether it was for prophecy, something happened and she went with him and she died holding the flowers he left her in the tower in her hands, like she crumbled those petals up and they fell from her palms as Ned told her that he would take care of Jon. And we know that, like, whether you believe show, whether you've paid attention when you read the books ever, we know this, we know what happened. And Jon is taking the road less traveled, not to Robert Frost it, in a way that he like you said, he's not going to climb up there and save Val. That's not his fight. His fight's gonna come with the War for the Dawn. His fight is gonna come with making the world right. He's not gonna put a girl in a tower to have a prophecy baby. Jon is not either of his dads. He, says constantly, oh, he says Ned Stark stuff. He says, my Lord Father this. I wonder if my Lord Father ever felt the way I feel, lying next to Ygritte, thinking Ned, but also Rhaegar, the same thing. It's like all these aspersions you cast on Ned, thinking that Jon's his bastard, and then you realize, oh shit, no, I'm casting these bitches on Rhaegar. Like, it's an interesting thought process, and I think Jon does his duty. As we see, Stannis respects him for that, doing his duty, gives him the nod when he does the Ed fetch me a block. I think it's interesting that Ned like taught him his duty, and Jon knows to use respect, do his duty, and do the right thing. And I think after he comes back from the dead, he's going to grapple with that a lot, and he's going to hit the dark side that Rhaegar probably saw a lot of.
That was really great what you said about Ygritte. I think she's such a great, fully fleshed out and formed personality, and she has such a huge impact on Jon. But yeah, it's the doomed romance is so part of them from the beginning, and my favorite scene in their whole relationship is when they sing the last of the giant song and he doesn't get it, and he's like, "Oh, there are hundreds of them," and she's like, "Oh, hundreds." Sweet, sad moment, but it also gets at how doomed their relationship is. It's always surrounded by these images of things passing away and the conflict and what they're going through, and it's just. But you do get the sense that it's a learning experience for Jon on the whole, and that he's trying to not have, ultimately not have the blind spots, hopefully, that Rhaegar had, like you said. I mean, we obviously don't know the details about what Rhaegar's relationship with Lyanna was like, but we do know what Rhaegar acted like when he got back. And was just like, he was like to Jaime, you know what, I really should have thought about this and had a council and replaced my dad and talked to people. That would have been smart. Too bad I just ran off with someone and didn't explain myself. Anywho.
I don't want to, apologize for Rhaegar because, I mean, either way, no matter what, as you know, it was shitty. Leaving Elia, in King's Landing and their kids, leaving his children. Shit, man. Okay, leaving his kids. Like, I used to, I don't want to say romanticize a lot Lyanna and Rhaegar, but I mean, it's romanticized and you're supposed to romanticize it. And like leaving his children and his wife, quote unquote, in King's Landing under his dad's reign, I get he didn't have much control over what happened there like that. Like, he left with Lyanna and whatever. However, his agreement with Elia about it, she had to have known, because otherwise there should have been a bigger stink. I mean, leaving that situation like that and then going off to just go, like, fucking, like, finger blast this northern girl in a tower and then eventually give her a fucking baby and, like, have Jon Snow birth and, like, all this bullshit, like, I just, like, I don't want to, like, feel sorry for him, but at the same time, it is a young man's politics in a way. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't have, like you just, how you said it, like, and framed it with him talking to Jaime, like, oh, when I come back, we'll figure this all out. Like, he was thinking in the present tense, and he was thinking, like, I have to make this prophecy happen, and here's the present tense. And he was not thinking long term, where Jaime was like, what the fuck? And like anyone else in the kingdom is like, what the fuck? And like Jon is gonna, I don't think he's gonna be presented with the opportunity to leave a woman that he's married to with kids for the War of the Dawn. I think Jon's big battle is gonna be the War of the Dawn. You know, in the end, he's going to be Azor Ahai, that kind of figure, and Dany might also be. And I just don't think he's gonna have the opportunity to leave.
No, that's my thing with Rhaegar. Rhaegar's not evil. He's not like his dad, but he had tunnel vision, and he had the ultimate mindset where it's like, it's I'm saving the world, so everything's gonna be fine, because that's the thing that I'm doing. And like when he goes to Willem Darry and says, like, I require sword and arms, it seems I must be a warrior. Like, that's for me, that's the most revealing Rhaegar moment, because it's just like he thinks it's just like a series of dominoes, and they're all just gonna fall, and it's just gonna be fine. And that's how he acts. And he's almost like Bloodraven. Bloodraven reminds me of him in that way, where they just have that attitude where it's just like, yeah, I'm doing the right thing. So it's just, what? Stop bugging me with your criticisms, you weird little mortals. And he doesn't.
He's doing the best he can. He's literally doing the best he can.
He's doing the best he can. But like, dude, like, it's gone. You should have more to say to Jaime than just, I meant to call a council before. Everything has gone so wrong on your watch, my friend. I mean, I'm angry with Rhaegar in large part because he had the potential to be so much better than he is. Because he was clearly a smart guy who wanted to save humanity. He had the best possible intentions. He did the research. He got the sword. He had the song. He has all the tropes you need to be the guy to save the world. And then he just vanished into history. And now he's just a ghost. And that's what's so fascinating to me about Rhaegar. Is like, he's on paper, he's the protagonist of the whole thing, right?
I guess, yeah.
If you just lay down in fantasy genre terms, he's the silver-haired prince with the tragic backstory, with the song and the princess who was going to save the world with it. He saw the comet, and now he's just backstory. And that's one of the things I love about A Song of Ice and Fire. It says, this guy, you know, he is at best a motivation for the real important people. And I do love what you said about Jon. Like, you know, he has to gradually develop a better model and, you know, move towards saving the world, hopefully as a collaboration, hopefully with Dany and other people, instead of this, I'm going to go it alone and not explain to anyone what I'm doing, even though that is kind of how Jon acts and dance. So that's something he does have to get over, because as Lord Commander, Jon is a little Rhaegar-y in terms of, yeah, I know the right thing, so shut up. I don't have to explain myself to you. Which, you know, part of me loves that. I'm a Stannis fan, and that's very Stannis as well. But it's not the most effective way to do things.
Absolutely not. I mean, and we're not going to get Stannis on the Iron Throne. I mean, so that obviously says we know Stannis is flawed in his ways, and we know Jon's flawed in his ways. We know all these characters. Again, George writes great characters. We all know that, but it's interesting to see how it all plays out like that.
Yeah, and he writes characters that are not quite where they're supposed to be, which is some of the fun. Like, a lot of our ships are ones that are never going to happen or are inherently doomed, because that's the power of them.
That's interesting. Mine aren't. I'm looking at mine right now.
All of yours are canon.
They're
except for Chloe's, guys. Except for all the ones that are canon, you see. And that's the appeal of Stannis for me. Like, Stannis is we see him go storm and dance. Like, Stannis should really be in the north. He should be in the Night's Watch. That's where he makes the most sense. He's angry and grim and celibate and likes being under siege and just sitting there and looking at stuff like that. He makes sense. He shouldn't be king. Although I prefer him to most kings for a lot of reasons, but he does not make any sense on the Iron Throne sitting in small council meetings, where he should be.
For him.
No, he should be at the end of the world with a bunch of losers eating shitty food and just waiting for something to happen. He'd be great at that. That was what he did at Storm's End. That's what he did better than anyone else, was sit under siege with no food.
Stannis would be into geocaching.
Pretty much. Like, Stannis is, I mean, he's just basically your uncle. He's just basically Ron Swanson. That's just what Stannis is.
I love that you just were like, Stannis is, and you got really worked up and you couldn't come up with a phrase for what Stannis is, but like I knew your emotion, but you were just like, Stannis, and I'm just like, yes, dear.
Well, because that's the ultimate Stannis moment, is when his men just stream out of nowhere at the wall, just screaming his name and nothing else.
That's you right now.
It's just what we do. I love the one true king so dearly. Anywho.
Do you want to talk about Asha and Carl together? Since
I think so. You're number 3 and mine number 2. That makes perfect sense. So this is just basically us, if we're just going to be honest about it.
Yeah. Asha and Carl, it's us. I think we know the reason it was on our lists. In fact, like, do I feel guilty because it was 2 for you and mine was 3? Am I in trouble?
I mean, I wasn't going to bring it up, but now that you say it.
Oh, shit! I'm in trouble. It's not, listen, Sandor Clegane, okay? Like, you know how I am, and you love that about me.
That's true. I do love that about you. No, it's true. I mean, all we have of Asha and Carl is literally one chapter, basically. So there is that.
But it's such a good... Can I read the passage thing? I'm going to read the passage.
I'm going to get the hell out of your way, lady.
Ooh, that's what I thought. Wow, he's even... Are we role-playing right now? Is this Asha and Carl modern AU role-play? What is happening? Okay. I'm just throwing things. That's good.
That sounds like Asha. Is it an axe?
It's my phone, but it's close, I guess. I mean...
It's the equivalent of an axe.
Yeah, Asha and Carl... wow, what a ship. The first time I read it, before I even, like, read this passage, like, it's just such, like, it's an innocence lost thing, and we get it through the symbolism of fruit, which, that's obviously something we know and talk about here and there.
Sure, the peaches, that's a big thing for George Martin. Yeah, with both Renly and this, it's clearly a huge thing for him.
Oh, yeah, more than that. Look at the peach, the actual brothel. Look at, I mean, that has a certain innocence lost, too. There's so much peach symbolism. There's so much fruit symbolism. We get the Persephone pomegranate symbolism when it comes to Sansa.
The lemon cakes, absolutely.
Lemons in general. Lemons being innocence and home and a better time for Dany and Sansa.
And then there's the blood oranges and Dorne, which have their own connotations, of course. It's almost like these books are really well written, Chloe. That's almost as though that's what we're saying.
Shut up. I mean, I love these books so much.
Anyway.
So, my favorite Asha Carl moment is the memory. It had still been summer then. Robert sat the Iron Throne. Balin brooded on the sea stone chair, and the 7 kingdoms were at peace. Asha sailed the Black Wind down the coast, trading. They called it Fair Isle and Lannisport, and a score of smaller ports before reaching the Arbor, where the peaches were always huge and sweet. You see, she said the first time she held one against Carl's cheek. When she made him try a bite, the juice ran down his chin and she had to kiss it clean. What? You can't not ship this. Who doesn't ship Asha? You know who doesn't ship Asha and Carl? Our friend Saren, Agenka. Yeah, she doesn't ship Asha. She hates it. And I'm just like, how can you... People ship Christopher and Asha, but they don't ship Asha and Carl. And first off, I also want to say, when I talk about the ship, it's Asha and Carl. It's not Carl and Asha, because that's feminism.
Hashtag feminism, hashtag woke. Asha's pretty clearly the dominant partner in the relationship, but it's such a sweet thing. And like you said, yeah, that scene is so... they spent the night devouring peaches and each other.
That's like... It's pure. That's a pure... Man, that's a ship. Asha and Carl are a ship, Emmett. They are such a ship. That's like, oh boy, his peach fuzz and her description. Like, you don't remember that description. You don't remember that detail. You don't get that HD, like, pixelized detail of his little, like, peach fuzz. You don't think about that 10 years later. I don't think about boys 10 years ago, their peach fuzz now. I don't think about that. Okay? Like, that's a big, like, she loves him. They love each other, and they're never gonna be together, and that's what's horrible. He's probably gonna die. Someone's gonna die. It's a song of someone's gonna die.
Chloe is determined to be sad about this, but yeah, I mean, it's framed in the narrative as such, because all these memories are happening in The Wayward Bride, in a chapter where Asha's super depressed because she lost the Kingsmoot and she thinks Theon's being horrible. I mean, she knows Theon's being horribly tortured, and like Carl is her little oasis, it's her little bubble that she has, and he calls her his sweet queen. And she's like, no, I'll never be queen of anything. And it's like, it's the one thing she still has, and she can't even fully have him because he's too lowborn to marry. And it's just very melancholy.
I'm making a really ugly face. You can see it, but no one else can, and that's fine. That's how I prefer it, honestly. Like, when I make ugly faces, I'm like, Emmett can see it, no one else. But
I assure you, people, it's art. But it's and it's just also because I mean, one of the things I love about Asha as a character, and she's one of my favorite characters in the story, is that when she's presented from the outside, when you see her through Theon's POV, she's the most brash, brazen, charismatic, in-control person on the planet, and it's awesome. And then when you get her POV, it reveals that she's actually unsure a lot of the time, and she doesn't always know what to do, and she's got these doubts that she's harboring, and these contradictions. And that's, I mean, much as I love Asha from the outside and what a badass she is, it's like, I love that too, that she's revealed as having these, like, it's not all lightning and badassery inside her brain 24/7. A lot of the time she's tired and confused and sad and just wants to be in bed with this guy she unexpectedly really is attached to, and she never expected to be attached to. And that's nice. Again, it's such an organic little relationship, and it's just something she wants to hold on to when she's losing everything else. Plus they have a super sexy, like, a role play kickoff to their sex scene where he grabs her and is throwing her down in the bed, and it's pretty sexy. That's my commentary on that.
Yeah, I agree with the above.
Yeah.
And it just represents, like, it's sadder than that. Let me just make it sadder for a second. It's sadder than that because, like, obviously we know in the Song of Ice and Fire world, it's not always easy peasy, peach breezy. Like, you don't just get to, like, raid up the aisles and eat peaches and have sex on barges and shit. That's not always how it goes.
Sadly.
Sometimes that's life. Otherwise, you can have it in real life. But I mean, like, in A Song of Ice and Fire, that's not how it goes. So, just thinking about, like, we know she's not going to marry Carl. What if she did? That'd be cool. What if, like, in the end, Asha and Carl, like, somehow are alive and they run away together and they're just off on adventures together? That would be great.
They have like a Manson Bravos and a Manson Karth and a Manson Old Town.
Yeah, and they're just traveling the seas together, making
Until
out
they're
and
old.
eating fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh heck. On barges, just laying around.
Do you want a houseboat, Chloe? Is that what this is really about?
You want to, like, just go on a barge across the nations forever?
Yeah, let's go hang out on rivers. Let's go pole up and down the Mississippi like it's the Rhine.
I'm in. I'm so in. Darling, I hate to bring it up, but I guess you should talk about Cat and Ned.
I was about to say, let me bring you back down to earth off our mutual loving
I was having too good of a time. You got me for a second there. I was real. You said some stuff.
Well, one of the things I do love about Catelyn's character and about that first book is that one of the things that mom and dad in fantasy don't do is fuck. That's something that's generally kept off stage or not alluded to at all, or you're being raised by your uncle and aunt Owen and Beru, and they don't have children, so for all you know, Luke Skywalker, Owen and Beru have never fucked. That just doesn't come up. That's just not a part of the story. And something I do love immediately about A Song of Ice and Fire establishes that no, Cat and Ned fuck. is a thing. They do it for fun. They do it to get through emotions. They do it to become closer. They do it as part of an intimate relationship. And I like that as part of mom and dad in fantasy. That it's not the most adventurous or unique sexual relationship in and of itself, but it is framed within the narrative as, for me, a different kind of thing within the genre. And I like the Cat Ned dynamic because, I don't know, she has a great mix of pushing him. The push and pull is what I love about Catelyn and all her relationships with Ned and with Rob and with everyone she deals with. She's always like trying to get what she wants and then always trying to understand what it is they want. And she's always trying to, it's always that negotiation with her, and that's what makes her an interesting character. And I like her relationship with Ned, and that scene in her bedchamber. He's going through these emotional turmoils, and she's trying to be rational and logistical and say, okay, this is what our house needs. This is what Robert's offering. I love that she points out to him, no, if you say no, he's going to think you're his enemy, and he's going to grow against you. And she's trying to reach out to him in the place that he is and deliver what he needs to know. And it's a relationship that's clearly built up over time, and there's a strategy to it, and it's not the marriage that was supposed to happen. And I kind of love that about it, that it's developed organically, even though, as she says, the Catelyn softened then to see his pain. Eddard Stark had married her in Brandon's place as custom decreed, but the shadow of his dead brother still lay between them, as did the other, the shadow of the woman he would not name, the woman who had borne him his bastard son. And I love that they've developed this relationship in the shadow of these relationships they feel like they should have had. And that this is the accidental, secondary, cast-off marriage. And that they've still managed to make something out of it. I like is sweet. And I like their last goodbye at King's Landing when they hug each other. And no one else has to like it. But that's why I think it's cute.
I like that you're saying no one else has to like it, but you're literally talking about me.
Only slightly. I'm only slightly subtweeting you here, babe.
Okay. I love that, to quote a popular song, Ned and Catelyn found love in a hopeless place. I do. I love that.
She swears it, folks.
I'm glad you can see my face. Emmett can see my face right now, and my face is not saying that I love that. It's saying, like, oh, she's gonna say some shit soon, and I'm not gonna like it. That's what he thinks my face is saying, folks.
I'm ready for it.
Okay, are you braced? Are you like...
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I talked about this today on my Tumblr. It's something I'm very passionate about, so I'm ready. I'm like in it to win it for this conversation. Yes, I love that Catelyn and Ned did find a way to build their love. They built their love. It was hard. It wasn't easy love, and that's what's so important, because sometimes love isn't easy. Sometimes love isn't the breeze blowing and you just love each other. Okay, like that's not always what love is. Sometimes love is arguments and petty passive aggressive moments and whatever. But love for Catelyn and Ned was very hard built. She entered the North as this woman with a child on her hip. That was her claim to the North. Her ticket to entry to the gates of Winterfell was she had the blood of Winterfell at her hip. She had Robb Stark birthed out of her vag at her hip. And Ned didn't. He came home at the same time to meet her with another kid on his hip that wasn't hers. And that undercuts her entire... That's all she had to get in at a time when Southerners were looked at as the devil because they burnt the Lord of Winterfell and the second Lord of Winterfell after he had died. I mean, Brandon and Rickard had just died at the hands of Southerners, at pyromancers in the capital, at Aerys putting a barbed chain around Brandon's neck. I mean, she entered just being this lone fish in a world of wolves, entered the wolves' den, and Ned shows up at the same time with a kid that isn't hers. And it's just the most undercutting personal moment for Cat. And then she asks him, hey, what's up with this kid? Can we just talk about it? I want to talk about it. I want to make this a healthy situation. And he shoves it to the side and he says, oh, it's interesting you want to talk about it, but never ask me about it ever again. We're not going to talk about it. It wasn't Ashara Dayne. And so she lives her entire life
until Ned dies, she lives thinking there's this woman that's like on a slight tier above me that has more information than I do. He wasn't the one I was meant to marry. I was meant to marry his older brother, but there's this woman that had his heart, and I don't have that heart. I have what's left of that heart. I don't have that heart anymore. And he goes rage ice cold on her and says, don't ever talk to me about her again. And she's just left in the dark to think there's this son that's not mine. I didn't birth this kid, and he showed up, and my husband will never talk to me about it. And now we have to go on with the rest of our lives forever like this. And so she tells herself, I love him, I love him, I love him. I love the children he's birthed me. This is the best life. I hate that fucking kid, Jon Snow. I hate his guts, but I love Ned, besides his bastard son that he got on some other woman. That wasn't me. I love Ned Stark, and I love the kids I've had with him, but not Jon Snow. And like, that's her whole life until she dies. That sucks, dude. I'm sorry. Like, you can think, yeah, they had a great relationship when they were happy together, but like, I mean, she was left to waste away in her brain of how, like, she went batshit because, like, she got resurrected and went crazy because all this bullshit has happened to her, and the Freys were awful, obviously, as we know, but I mean, like, it wasn't just the Freys that made her like this in the afterlife. Like, the afterlife was her, a cold-hearted, stone-hearted woman, like, a shell of a being because, like, of a communication error, because Ned couldn't tell her because Lyanna made him promise, and he just deigned to think maybe there's no way to communicate.
Oh, totally. I agree. I mean, the fact that they're the shouldn't have happened secondary cast-off marriage has huge costs and consequences for them, as well as the organic earned part of it. Because, like you said really well that Catelyn feels this woman who has access to more information than she does, that was closer to his heart, and she's only getting what's left. And that he feels that way by this whole life. That, like, Brandon was supposed to have the lordship of Winterfell and be hand to the king in front of the queens, and none of this is what I was supposed to be doing. And I don't, I mean, it's interesting that, I suppose what I love most is the contradiction between how for Ned and Kat's children, like, their marriage is the foundation, right? It's the rock. Mm-hmm. It's what everything is based off of. It's what they think of when they think of love and home. And then you look at Ned and Kat's eyes, you realize what a fragile, flickering flame this is that wasn't supposed to happen and has these huge wounds in it. And I suppose I love... You're absolutely right that there's this huge wound in it, and that reverberates poorly on Ned especially. But I love that, that the main parents in a genre fiction story are not this sentimentalized, idealized relationship that is easy to understand and compartmentalize, that it's a very real relationship that has these horrible wounds and this kind of earned joy that they've managed to find with each other. I love that it was a part of a story that could very easily have been taken for granted and not fleshed out at all. And I love that it was given the fleshed out amount it was given.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I didn't mean to get intense there. I'm sorry. Did I just...
No, you were intense in the absolute right direction. That was good.
Good. It just, like, it sucks to think about, because it's like, I think, again, not to backtrack to where we were earlier, but I feel like A Song of Ice and Fire doesn't have very many healthy ships. It doesn't, and that Ned and Catelyn is one of their healthiest ships says a lot, honestly, about the state of the A Song of Ice and Fire union we have going on, of unions, I should say. The Song of Ice and State of the Song of Ice and Fire unions. There aren't a lot of healthier relationships than Ned and Cat, and I mean, they're healthy to the most extent they could be, and to protect their family, and that's what mattered in the immediate. And we all know Ned wasn't the best practicing politician, and we know Catelyn had great politics, but she couldn't rise above her station on him. I mean, she could only extend herself as much as she could. We saw what she did with Tyrion. She tried, but that was not a best choice. And I'm not saying that was a smart choice at all. But I mean, just like, she's a woman in the story, very much so. Women are marginalized and limited. And Catelyn is someone who has been, she relied on this system to nourish her entire life. She was told by her father that if she behaved, if she said yes, if she married who he said she should marry for swords and for regime, like, I mean, if she did that,
things would be okay. That's what she was told, and she did. And then that very system that she subscribed to, that she put her whole life on, ended up murdering her. I mean, that's a bigger overall arcing story. Yeah, that very system murdered her. I've had practice today. I'm very on this topic, by the way. Good call.
Now then, we have arrived at one of the major A Song of Ice and Fire ships again, your number 2 choice.
Oh no. Do I have to talk about it? Oh, heck.
She says, like Sansa, about this ship.
Look, here's the deal: is I only saved 2 quotes for this.
Only 2
out loud.
The restraint,
it was really hard.
The genuine restraint is astonishing here, folks. I was expecting at least 5 or 6. I was snuggling back into my pillows, being like, all right, I better get comfortable for this particular portion of the podcast.
10
it's going to take a
later.
while. Exactly. Okay. How have you managed to boil it down to 2 quotes? I'm interested.
Okay. The 2 quotes that I chose, it should be 3. I didn't pull the third. I can pull it right now. Honestly, I should pull it right now.
It immediately went up, everybody.
Listen.
That took 0 time at all.
So Sansa Stark deserves the universe. Whether it's whoever she wants to be. This is the best place to start, is that I ship Sansa Stark and her happiness. But more specifically than Sansa Stark and her happiness, I ship Sansa Stark and Sandor Clegane, because that is what brings her happiness. That is my thesis statement of this entire piece, and now we are going to continue on.
Please proceed.
So Sansa Stark and Sandor Clegane, my favorite. I have 3 favorite quotes. I'm going to read you one right now, and then I will read you more later. I have 3, as I said. The silence went on and on. So long she began to grow afraid once more, but she was afraid for him now, not for herself. She found his massive shoulder with her hand. He was no true knight, she whispered to him. The hound threw back his head and roared. Sansa stumbled back, away from him, but he caught her arm. No, he growled at her. No, little bird. He was no true.
Please.
I'm having a lot of emotional turmoil right now because I just remembered that it's the best ship in the world and it's canon. So that's a thing. But
give her a few seconds, folks. Let her experience this. It's just hitting her in waves.
Sansa Stark, a young girl from the north, a sheltered area to begin with, and then a sheltered girl that her dad kept her behind the gates of Winterfell until she was old enough to go anywhere at the king's request. He kept her behind the gates of Winterfell from his PTSD. He couldn't risk losing his daughters, these beautiful girls that he was so lucky to even have after all of the fucking war and just the loss and the pain and suffering that Ned Stark has endured. And the king comes to visit, and the king changes his life. The king says, come to King's Landing, be my hand, and Ned does. He knows he has to, and he goes, and he takes his daughters with him. Sansa especially, bright, beautiful, young Sansa, the gorgeous, always good, always excelling in school, always smart and beautiful and talented, as Arya says, in playing instruments and, verse and all these different things. Just so, the perfect girl, the perfect princess of Winterfell type of thing. She comes to the capital thinking of songs of chivalry and maidens and knights and people doing the right thing, and learns that's not what it's about. And Sandor Clegane helps to teach her that. He who learned it so young, who is suffering from survivors' trauma and guilt, suffering from knowing his little sister, his younger sister was murdered, probably because of his brother, but we haven't gotten the pure confirmation, but we've gotten hints. And his dad was murdered, and just suffering abuse at the hands of his older brother, who pushes fucking face into the brazier and has burnt his face, sloughed off his skin with flame, just for playing with a toy of his, as young kids. All this trauma that
Sansa Stark meets the truest knight who refuses to be called a knight, and they save each other, and it's a big mood. Like, I'm not gonna yell big mood right now, but I'm like, big mood. Sansa Stark and Sandor Clegane are in love because he's a true knight, even though he won't admit it, and she's the ladies in the song. So
there you have it, folks.
And listen, they're not old enough right now for each other. Like, he's 30. It's 300 AC. He's 30. She's 14. That's weird. I get that. They don't have to fuck right now, but like, he showed up as a fraternal figure for Sansa Stark. He showed up. Sansa's dad's dead. He's like, wow, your dad didn't teach you shit politically. You need some help. I'm gonna tell you shit. It's gonna sound real. It's because it is real. It's gonna sound real, and you're just gonna have to learn, sister. And he tells her, but then like she falls in love with him, and she also has like some sexual awakening dreams about him in A Feast for Crows. She also thinks he kissed her. He didn't kiss her, he just like held a knife to her neck. But I mean, like, that's good enough. I think that too.
Yes, indeed. And I love that moment when she says he was no true knight to him, because he's convinced himself that, because the powers that be sanctified Gregor, that means everything is bullshit and there's no point in trying to uphold any kind of values. And what she says is like, being a knight means more than the sir in front of your name. It means what you do and what you are and what you try to be. And that's something no one ever told him before. And that she, the seemingly naive, the little girl who was just for head in the clouds, she manages to suddenly accidentally pierce to the most insightful core of the whole thing. And that's just great. How can you not love that? I ask of you.
Okay, also, and then there's like other things, like when he starts to sexually notice Sansa Stark, and he's like, you're turning into a young woman, and she's like tall with tits, and he's like, what the fuck? And he's tall with no tits, so that's cool. And another quote, if we're gonna go there, obviously one of the best ship quotes for Sansa is the Knight of the Blackwater. And Emmett, let me tell you,
Yes.
I wasn't when I first how do I word this without embarrassing myself the most?
You can't, so just go ahead.
Thanks, I agree. I really agree. I'm like, I already dug this hole. Guess I gotta go through with it.
You dug this grave.
I'm gonna kiss your stupid face. God. Gosh. Yeah. When I first jumped on, first off, the first read through, I didn't understand Gravedigger and didn't realize it was Sandor. Let's not talk about it. We'll move on.
Damn.
Second read through, I got it. Yeah. But
guess that's okay. That's cool, I guess.
The whole Sansa fandom, like, we know that the Knight of the Blackwater, so I don't read fanfic. I don't do fanfic. It's just not for me. I don't have time.
I keep trying. It's mostly bad is the problem.
I agree.
Some of it is amazing, but
some is good, some is bad, and it's like I hit the bad and I'm not motivated to continue. You know what I mean? It's not.
Yeah, there's a lot of chaff to get through the wheat, unfortunately.
But one time I read this fanfic, and it was where Sansa went with Sandor after the Blackwater. At the Battle of the Blackwater, he said, come with me. No one would hurt you again or I'd kill them. And she went with him. And they went over to like Tyrosh eventually. He ended up having to like fight in a trial by combat for her because like the
naturally
Mayor Duke whatever feudal name the dude had. I don't remember. It's been a couple years.
The Mayor Duke of Tyrosh. Yes, it's canon.
Whatever. That dude, he wanted to like fuck Sansa, and she's like, no. And Sandor's like, no. Like they were not having it. And so like he ended up defeating him in a trial of combat. But anyways, I digress. He had this like proposal scene. He was all like, I want to give you birds and puplings and blah 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 and take back your home. And I'm like, this is the sweetest thing I've ever read. So they have this scene at the Battle of the Blackwater where he comes to her chambers and she enters her chambers and he's there in the corner in the dark, drunk, alone, like a man baby, just like crouched in the corner, just like, oh, you're in your room now where I am, haha. And I'm like, yes, that's where. Anyways, like
The fire has traumatized him and brought him back to his childhood moment. And
he goes to the
desperate for
girl he's tried
sanctuary.
to save. He's tried the one girl who's always treated him like an equal, and the one girl that he would want to save. And he goes there. He goes to his place of home. He goes where it feels like home.
Pretty much, yeah.
I only know who's lost. Me, he said.
Yeah, that puts the whole Blackwater in perspective. I mean, you've watched the Blackwater unfold with Davos' sons going up in flames and Tyrion going down in the bridge of ships, and I mean that's the grand irony of the Blackwaters. It ends with like Dantos Holler doing "Oh, to be a knight," and like this complete fake representation of hope, but at the core of it, what you have is this presentation of Sandor saying, "I only know who's lost, and that's me, the man who fears fire more than anything else."
And that's like Sansa's whole entire plot is she gets that real taste of real, and then she's stuck by LiesandArbor Gold. Haha.
Where have I heard that phrase before?
Never. But my favorite, so one of the big quotes in the fandom, I could keep you safe, he rasped. They're all afraid of me. No one would hurt you again or I'd kill them. He yanked her closer, and for a moment she thought he meant to kiss her. He was too strong to kiss. That's wrong. He was too strong to fight. She closed her eyes, wanting it to be over, but nothing happened. Still can't bear to look, can you? She heard him say. He gave her arm a hard wrench, pulling her around and shoving her down onto the bed. I'll have that song, Florine and Jonquil, you said. His dagger was out, poised at her throat. Sing, little bird, sing for your little life. And like, so like a lot of people don't understand how that could be shippy, but like I do.
Well, it's her relationship to songs and romance and that whole chivalric arc are being brought to the absolute forefront, because here is a quote-unquote knight trying to quote-unquote take her away, but it's this crazy, drunk, traumatized, scary man who is awakening feelings in her that are not the same that are supposed to be in the chivalric romance. So it's this weird interplay of the tropes and their antithesis kind of colliding in the same frame.
Agreed.
She's singing about the fake story while the real story is unfolding in front of her, involving her. And that's just the power of Sansa's character, is the collision between the stories and the reality. And like, it's not just about, haha, stories are fake. It's about how they intersect and interweave. And that's interesting. And that's what makes the relationship interesting, I think.
I agree. No, I do agree. Oh, I'm just having a lot of emotions about something.
I know. You can just... I know. It's an intense ship. You know what you were getting into picking this one. It's your own fault for putting it on the list.
No, for sure. And we've talked about how George has A, written on a Beauty and the Beast show.
True.
B, loves Beauty and the Beast. It's one of his favorite things. He loves the dynamic. He loves the trope. It's very interesting. George wrote the TV version episode of Blackwater, as we know. He got to do the writing on that episode and like work with the scenes and get things exactly where he wanted them. If there's an episode where I'm just like, you want to watch an adaptational episode from the books to show that's a show episode where I respect it, Blackwater. Blackwater is my favorite episode of all time.
Yep,
season
mine
2,
too.
episode 9.
Absolutely.
Is it really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's always been number
big
one.
Nerd.
It's the best one.
Sandor and Sansa have like this, I mean, as we know, like I said earlier, he has the survivor's guilt. He wants Sansa to survive, and Sansa has no agency in any of her choices, and Sandor is the first choice she's ever had any agency in, and she has these like bed dreams of him when she's in the Vale. She dreams of him in her marriage bed, dreams of him kissing her, and she thinks all the time about how he kissed her at the Blackwater, but he didn't, that we know of. Like, we read it originally and he didn't. And it's just such like a, and then he travels with her sister for a whole book. Like, if Arya thought she could get rid of her sister bond, and if Sandor thought he could get rid of his Sansa bond, they got fucked into traveling together for a book. And half the time they just talk about Sansa. Half the time Sandor's like, so I don't want to talk about your sister, but like, hey, have you thought about your sister lately? And she's just like, what the fuck? Like, what?
Does your sister ever talk
you?
about your sister ever talk about me? I haven't seen my sister in a year, but does she ever talk about me though? It's pretty much, and yeah, they're both really reluctant. I mean, the Arya Sandor relationship is great too in that regard, that they're just kind of talking around each other the entire time because they can't bear to actually agree that they have anything in common. And one of the things they have in common is this intense, difficult relationship with Sansa. And you know, I've always part of me has always wanted Sandor to be there when Arya and Sansa reunite. Like if there's a third character I would want to be on scene for that moment, it would be Sandor Clegane.
And then, of course, especially with Arya and Sandor regarding them, we have that quote, "You know where I'm about to go. Are you, like, feeling it? 'Cause I'm about to get there." She watches Sandor about to die, and she thinks how pathetic he is the entire time. And he's reduced to tears, to begging, to sobbing, and he says, "And the little bird, your pretty sister, I stood there in my white cloak and let them beat her. I took the bloody song. She never gave it. I meant to take her too. I should have fucked her bloody and ripped her heart out before leaving her for that dwarf."
Yeah, man, that quote is just like, it's like
Heavy.
a buffet of emotions. It's like, man, that is like the best and worst of humanity right there in a single paragraph.
And you know what? The show, for once, I don't always agree with their characterizations or things, but they said something that I think could have been added to that paragraph, which was, maybe then I would have had one last happy memory. And
Yeah.
the second Sandor said that in the show, I was like, bro, no, bro.
And that's true. And that's very true. And that's the other thing about Sandor Clegane, where he reminds me of Aeron Greyjoy in this respect, where because they're so screwed up and because they've so aged inside and their brothers and their older brothers abuse them, people forget how young they are. Like,
Yeah.
I've often seen Aeron depicted in, like, fan art and in essays as someone who's, like, in his 40s or 50s. He's, like, 28. Like, that's how old he is, because he was,
That's how Sandor
13.
is, 297.
Yeah. Like, so they are, they act older than they are because they want to be tough and they want to have these defense mechanisms up because of what their older brothers did to them, but they're still kids if you really break down who they are inside.
That's the other thing is, like, yeah, they act younger, but, like, at the same time, no, they don't. They act their age. It's just they've never been allowed to act their age.
And that's an excellent point, true. They had to grow up so quickly. And they were in cultures, I mean, they were in such horrible environments. Pike and the Clegane Keep. Can you imagine two worse places to grow up?
Sandor Clegane grew up knowing that, like, as soon as his brother left and kept coming back, but his sister died and his dad died, he knew he was next, man. Like, that's what Sandor Clegane knew. He knew he had to leave that autumn grass because he was next.
Well, that's the thing they have in common, that you have both in the Clegane household and the Greyjoy household, you have this one member who is just preying on the entire rest of the family.
Who could you be talking about in the Greyjoy house? I don't know.
In the Greyjoy case, you give that person magic, and that's the difference. Euron is just like
fine.
Euron is just like if you took Gregor and it's like, you know what, let's give you superpowers. Let's see how that goes.
I mean, but that happened to Gregor too, when you
That's
think
true.
about it. So
Gregor ends up as Robert Strong.
Really interesting parallel, honestly, what you just brought up. So,
and if I might seize upon that as a transition into my personal number one ship. So bringing up Cersei and Robert Strong, excellent introduction to my primary ship, my number one choice, my dream companionship, the two that belong together, and that, of course, is Cersei Lannister and Victarion Greyjoy.
Take it away, Emmett. Take it away.
I'm just going to start with this quote from Cersei's Second Dance with Dragons chapter when she first encounters Robert Strong. The queen felt cold steel slide beneath her, a pair of great armored arms lifting her off the ground, lifting her up into the air as easily as she had lifted Joffrey when he was still a babe. A giant, thought Cersei, dizzy as he carried her with great strides towards the gatehouse. She had heard that giants could still be found in the godless wild beyond the wall. That is just a tale. Am I dreaming? No. Her savior was real. 8 feet tall or maybe taller, With legs as thick around as trees, he had a chest worthy of a plow horse and shoulders that would not disgrace an ox. So yeah, Cersei's type basically is Victarion. She wants this giant dude that she can order around and kill her enemies. That's what Cersei needs in her life. I know that Cersei Euron is a ship that exists, especially since the show made it kind of a thing. But no, that makes no sense. They're both way too dominant. They would not be able to make room for each other. The dynamic would make no sense. Cersei Victarion makes perfect sense. Cersei needs someone to tell what to do. Victarion needs someone to tell him what to do. I can just imagine in my head Cersei like pointing Victarion at the Tyrells and going, chop. And then he would have his axe in hand and just be cutting them in half, just on behalf of his mistress. Within 45 seconds of the two of these people meeting, she would have him just wrapped around her little finger. It's just this horrible, perfect trash ship that will, of course, never happen in the narrative, never could possibly happen in the narrative. But part of me wants it because of how much sheer, ridiculous, petty damage they could cause. Because ultimately, Cersei and Victarion are ridiculously shallow people who have been allowed far too much power. And watching the damage they could do together would just be so much fun. It speaks to the truly perverse side of my heart, also known as the entirety of my heart. And that's why they're my number one. At
You
me.
know, I don't think I can knock that, honestly.
Boom.
You spoke from the heart, from the dick, from the balls. I feel like even a little, like I don't
A
know
little
how
bit,
that
man.
works, but
Cersei would be on top the entire time. You can imagine that pretty clearly.
no, I actually am seeing it very vividly right now in my brain hole. I can imagine her like thinking about how stupid he is all the time too. So that's kind of a plus.
That's true. That's true. And she would have utter contempt for him, but he would be very useful in bed. And she wouldn't have to have the pretenses that she had with Lancel of looking like Jaime or Taina being on her side. Like he would just be a complete useful tool for her. And that's what Cersei needs, because she keeps trying to convince herself she wants love or anything like it, but she really doesn't. What she wants is a tool, and a tool with a dick attached to it. So that's Victarion. Again,
Okay.
if you take Robert Strong and you give him a ship and an arm made of fire and roughly 10% more sentience, that's basically Victarion.
Do you think Robert Strong fucked before he was Robert? Like, do you think Rhaegar fucked besides like the bitches he raped?
I don't think Gregor Clegane ever had consensual sex once in his entire life now.
Me either. Cool. I was just curious.
That would be my bet. I mean,
No, I wouldn't bet you on that. Like, I bet that I agree.
I bet Gregor started with rape and ended with rape and was 100% rape in the interim.
Yikes, dude, that's gross.
I know, right? Imagine Gregor and Ramsay swapping stories over the table.
No more. Nope, gross.
No, just hope for them to kill each other. But anyway, yeah. So that's for me. That's what for me where Cersei Victarion comes from, because I feel I feel there's a certain, and that when Cersei sees Robert Strong and goes, yes, oh yes, there's a certain kind of intense, weird, psychological, sexual identification there, especially with his name being Robert and the way she's tried to like imitate Robert sexually with Taina. There's this weird thing in Cersei's head where she wants that kind of, she wants Robert back, but she wants to control him this time. And like I feel that's what Victarion would offer her. And I think that's something sexually Cersei desires deep down where she can't really acknowledge it.
Oh no, I 100% agree with you on that. That's a very good glimpse what you just grabbed, because like she really does. It's like a controllable zombie strong dude. Yep.
And that's what Makuro has in Victarion. Makuro just turned Victarion into a controllable zombie C-list Marvel villain. And that's all that Cersei needs. You can imagine Qyburn Qyburn and Makuro are just doing the same thing on different continents. You could just swap Victarion in for Robert Strong and just no one would know the difference.
Side note, I do want to put in the a ship that Close the Door podcast mentioned today. Qyburn.
Oh God.
The tension is there, friend.
Sure. I could see them fucking on the small council meeting, arguing after everyone else has left long into the night.
You could. I mean, you could. Yeah.
You brought this up, lady. You don't get to just drop me into the middle of this and then back away. You're in this with me now. You understand?
Yes, sir. I mean, we're pie winning together, right?
There's also a thing.
Because all I do is pie win.
Get out.
I'll go. This was fun.
No. Exactly. But for me, the reason I ship Cersei and Victarion, I will close my ship with this, is that I love the two characters for the same reason, which is that it's so much fun to watch them fail. Like, that's the fun of both Cersei Lannister and Victarion Greyjoy. Is you look at them and go, you idiots, do you really not realize that you are destroying yourselves and trusting the worst possible people? And they think they're winning and they think they're awesome, but they're ridiculous. And I like those characters in general. That's just a thing I enjoy across stories and across mediums, is characters that you are supposed to like laugh at for how ridiculous and foolish their ambitions are until they collapse. That's just the thing that appeals to my perversity. And both Cersei and Victarion fit that mold. So I would love to watch them combine their forces and burn together. I would love to watch Jaime kill Cersei and Euron kill Victarion at the same time in the same room. That is my fondest heart's desire. Arrange this for me, please.
Okay,
for Valentine's Day.
This is a really tall order. As your girlfriend of like maybe close to like how many? I don't know math. A while. I don't feel like
Jeez.
your face right now. What I'm saying is, so I feel like I'm glad that you had that crack ship, though, in a way, because I feel like it opens up what we're about to go into as the number one. This is the final. This is, babe,
Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached our destination.
I don't mean for this to be my thing. It's my thing. This is, if you've ever thought you had the softest ship in the... First off, wait a second. I'd like to chat about how this wasn't on your ships.
I almost got away with it, guys. I was wondering this entire time when she was going to bring this up.
I thought about it for like an hour. I'm not going to lie to you. I was sitting here and I was like, ooh, I got to bring it up. I got to say it right before I do it.
Because what was I going to say? Like, also, let's turn it over to Chloe so she can talk far more eloquently about this topic.
Okay, A, eloquently, that's dragging it out. B, smart. Good call.
With the Asha Carl ship, I knew we could have a conversation about a ship we both held. With Howland and Ashara, this is your masterpiece, and you need to be the one to discuss it. So I yield the floor to you.
I guess Mademoiselle. I intro it with a quote from one of my favorite chapters of all time. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you can guess what chapter it is.
I have no idea what this could possibly be. I wonder if it
couldn't be a Bran chapter. Yeah.
I wonder if it's his second chapter in Storm of Swords.
The Crannog man saw a maid with laughing purple eyes dance with a white sword, a red snake, the Lord of Griffins, and lastly with the quiet wolf. But only after the wild wolf spoke to her on behalf of a brother too shy to leave his bench. Bran 2, The Storm of Swords. First, we have to talk about how Ashara Dayne is put on a pedestal by shitty men all over the books for like the whole books. All they do, men and women, are just like, Ashara Dayne this, Ashara Dayne that. And Ashara Dayne's like, that's not what I did, bitch.
She's entirely imposed upon as a character who belongs to the backstory. She just is distorted and twisted through other people's narratives, projected upon. Exactly correct.
Lots of projection. Barristan projects on her. Cersei uses and projects her. She uses her as a stepping stone to get to Ned. She thinks that's like the way to do it. She's like, oh, that's how I'm going to get to Ned, is that chick he once fucked. We don't know if he fucked her or not, but she thinks it. Everyone thinks it. Westeros thinks it. Harwin thinks it. Everyone thinks it. Ned Dayne thinks it. Like, everyone thinks it. But guess who has no say in her story?
The lady herself?
Exactly. Ashara Dayne with the laughing purple eyes. Not haunting, because guess what? You guys, perspective is really important, and perspective in A Song of Ice and Fire is a huge theme that I really love and tag onto. And Ashara Dayne, her story is told through everyone else's perspectives, especially how she's seen. When Howland sees her with laughing eyes, that's a huge story jump. Anyone that has followed me for a while on the internets anywhere knows that I love the crack theory, quote unquote, of Ashara and Howland are in the neck making out right now. Like, they had Mira and Jojen. They're having a good life. It makes sense on so many thematic levels. It makes sense on a level of the Cranog men versus the Danes, the Great Empire of the Dawn, and whole magical being moment. That's like a really big kind of thing, in my opinion. Like, I think that's a big moment that those two intersect. I think finding that out, I think finding those answers together, that's big. Ashara Dayne has so much information out there. It keeps getting talked about that, like, it's not okay that, like, she's just mentioned through other dudes' point of views. And I think Barristan, I think we hear a lot about from Barristan about, like, all these things in the past, and every single time he turns out kind of wrong in a way. Like, Barristan's
Very
not,
true.
yeah, he's not a remarkably poignant point of view. Like, he's not, you don't look to him for truths.
Exactly. That's a good point. Well said.
And then in A Dance with Dragons, in The Discarded Knight, he even says, he has this big moment, and it's such an ironic, like, shut up, Barristan moment, where he's thinking about Daenerys, and he's thinking about Quentin, and Daenerys Targaryen, whatever else she might be, was still a young girl, as she herself would claim when it pleased her to play the innocent. Like all good queens, she put her people first, else she would have never have wed Hizad Zolarak. But the girl in her still yearned for poetry, passion, and laughter. She wants fire, and Dorne sent her mud. You could make a poultice out of mud to cool a fever. You could plant seeds in mud and grow a crop to feed your children. Mud would nourish you, where fire would only consume you, but fools and children and young girls would choose fire every time. Dance of Dragons, The Discarded Knight. Listen, Barristan.
Do tell.
Barristan is just like the most incel motherfucker in the world. Like, you're never gonna get the girl. You chose the Kingsguard. The girl's dead, hashtag, quote unquote. And the biggest irony is between Barristan thinking young girls want fire, they don't want mud. Mud could nourish. I'm mud. Ashara choosing Howland would be choosing mud, man.
Indeed, it would be a direct refutation to Barristan's self-pitying monologue. I do love that about it. That's a perfect image, especially how often mud is associated with the Crannog men as a slur, and to have Ashara choose it is just a great refutation of that.
Absolutely, especially when, like, she's already been subjected to, like, short little fucking Dornish men. She's had the swarthy Dornish. She's had little, like, 5'6" men with dark hair and dark skin just, like, trying to hit on her all the time. Like, she lives there. She gets it. You know, she's got these, look, one thing is, like, dudes are bad. Y'all are the worst. Like, guys are the worst. We get that. But, like, short men, dudes that are short are worse than dudes. Okay, like, that's a broad,
Wow. We throw in some shade tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
on a scale
I
of 1
don't
to 10,
disagree.
you must be this tall to ride, is what I'm saying.
Oh my. This is entirely reasonable, folks.
That's it though, man. Like, Ashara is just real pure, and it's kind of like the idea of, like, maybe Ashara Dayne got to have agency in the end after all. Maybe she didn't fuck Brandon. Maybe she didn't fuck Ned. Maybe she ended up going for Howland Reed, who's this little Cranog man who spent like 4 years off of school. He took a vocational journey off of school to just, like, look at weirwoods and, like, get visions and just, like, chill, bro. And, like, maybe Ashara found him and he found her. And I don't know, dude. Howland and Ashara equaling Mira and Jojen is just, like, a natural, pure thought for me now. Like, I don't concern it. It helps me sleep at night knowing that Ashara got to be with him instead of just like suffering.
And you got Jojen's skills and the fact that his eyes changed color and that Greywater is on the move and is isolated, doesn't have a maester.
Oh.
Yeah. All this setup that could easily allow for such a thing. I may have read your stuff.
What a guy. Worse than that is like, hey, do you ever think about... Okay, brace yourself. Are you ready? Take a drink. How many whiskeys are you in? Where are you?
I've had all of them.
You drank all of them, babe?
One by one, in front of the camera, no less.
Where was I? I should have died with you.
Theon. I should have been drunk with him.
I don't remember what I was going to say because I got really excited about you drinking.
Oh, babe. You were going to say something about Howlin' in the Shore, something I was not ready to hear. Something pure.
All I know is that, like, what I'm saying about Ashara is that in a world where we know George isn't the most progressive, he isn't like some sexual hero when it comes to progression for people who are marginalized, for like gay people, for queer people, for people who don't subscribe to the normal lord and lady marriage. He's not like this progressive man who sits there thinking this would be the most kinkiest queer thing I could do. Like, he's not like that. People tend to make it out for that, but like, Shara is a nice thematically foreshadowed ship that, look, I've come to terms with if it's not canon. I'll die, is what I'm telling you. I'll die. But I could accept it if it's not canon. I can figure it out. But I do think that it holds the most weight in an Ashara Dayne theory as far as she's off the screen, he's off the screen. They both have all these secrets no one else knows. Guess what? They're together. There's beautiful history between, in a way, it's just very parallel between the Crannogs and the Great Empire at the Dawn. They have all these different things that are similar to each other. It's just thematically, mythically, all of it. It's beautiful. And it's so subtle that people deign to forget it. Deign to forget it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'll be here all night. But again, people think that, young girls would choose fire, and Ashara Dayne, who suffered so much in the Ashara Dayne, who suffered so much in the rebellion, she lost her family and friends, and she had to serve people that she didn't really feel a connection to, and she was alone in a viper's pit, in a lion's pit, in a dragon's pit. She was alone in King's Landing, and she came home, and who knows what actually happened. Did Ashara have sex? Did she get pregnant? No one knows. Did she exist? Did she kill herself? Did she not? No one knows. And she certainly hasn't ever had the shot for it, and I pray that we get the glimpse of her finally getting her shot. Whether she's live, whether the story unravels, I just hope Ashara Dayne gets a little more time than 11 mentions in text, named or non-named. I hope that she gets at least 20 mentions in the end, at least. And that she's literally just happy in the bogs of Greywater Watch, no maesters to watch her and report to the Citadel, no masters at arms, dead knights in the bogs, waiting for her children to come home, waiting for Mira to come home, waiting to hug Mira and tell her that she was so brave, that she did everything she could have, and that she watched her brother, watched over him as much as she could have, and how proud Ashara is of Mira Reed.
Bless your heart, ma'am. That was beautifully said.
Thanks. It hurts real bad, so.
I know. That's the postscript, right? Drunk, A Song of Ice and Fire. It hurts real bad.
It does. I know it's silly, but I'm so glad you were on me tonight. We got to talk about all of the pain. Some
all
of it, not
ships.
even all. No, not even all. We didn't talk about like Jane Poole. We didn't talk about anyone. Dude, we got like a glimpse. We should do this again because we got a glimpse into the future, like maybe like a 10th of sadness.
That's true. We should just have a sadness-focused episode sometime. That sounds perfect.
I'm in.
I look
I'm in
forward
for
to
part 2 of sadness. I will be calling you. I know you, so I'll be calling you.
I don't believe I could escape even if I wanted to.
I know. Man, I don't know. What do you have? Anything you've thought of in the last bit to come up with to end with? Any relationshipy? Do you have any like real good quotes? Do you have some artistic quotes? Are you like sitting there like, oh, love in A Song of Ice and Fire is like blank, and here's a quote.
Well, that's a lot of pressure. No, I think Martin isn't necessarily the best with sex scenes. Some of his romantic relationships are stiff, but I think he does best with relationships that feel like they are oases within a larger universe. Eyes inside the storm. Those are Martin's best romantic relationships. The ones that feel like they're little fragile bubbles and you're investing yourself in them before they pop. And I think he writes that really well. I will say that much.
No, I follow that, especially Arianne and Daemon, especially Carl and Asha.
Yep.
That
Jon
reminds
and
me a lot of
Ygritte,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, Jon and Ygritte, even Cat and Ned to an extent.
True. That's by the time we meet them, it's already about to pop. It's designed for sadness in that way, but a beautiful poetic sadness nonetheless.
Love in A Song of Ice and Fire is so different than love in the real world. It's all sadder. It's all more traumatic. God, me and PoorQuentyn, we covered a lot of love tonight. I'm feeling. You feel a lot of love? How you feeling, buddy?
And we did a lot of love crafting, if you will. Some love
crafting.
space craft, because you see.
Would you say it's HP? Love crafting?
I'll go. I'll just go. I'll go away.
No, you should stay.
Okay.
It was fun. I think that's it. Any closing remarks?
That covers it.
Sansa's canon, so's Ashara.
We are correct and will always be correct.
Man, I like the way you think. I do like the way you think.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. Big thank you to PoorQuentyn, to Emmett Booth for hanging out with us tonight, just getting drunk. Heck, he drank 6 shots of honey whiskey, you guys. 6 big, like, were they 4 ounces? Find out. I need to know for science.
For science is facts. I don't know. They're not telling me.
2 to 4.
I would guess somewhere in between those. Sufficient to be belligerent, madame. That's how much
I would say like about a pound. You drink like a little over a pound of booze. Good job.
And I weigh so few pounds to begin with.
Oh heck, you're like bird bones. Yeah, you hung out with us for the long haul then. I'm pretty impressed. Thank you, Emmett Booth.
I'm just Big Walder Frey. I'm a tiny little ambitious sociopath.
Aw, but you're our tiny little ambitious sociopath, Emmett
Precisely.
Booth. You know that?
Precisely.
That's some drunk ASOIAF shit. Thank you for joining us. This has been Drunk A Song of Ice and Fire. This has been so fun. Heck, thank you, PoorQuentyn, Emmett Booth, for joining us tonight. Make sure, if you haven't, when this is airing, checked out, please check out Emmett's second part of Theon, A Dance with Dragons Theon. He's doing an amazing series over on his Tumblr at poorquentyn.tumblr.com. It's wonderful. Check out Notacast. Brendan B. Fish and PoorQuentyn have joined together to make a beautiful, epic podcast. Really great every week. It's a reread podcast going through chapter by chapter. Their Catelyn chapter was amazing. Their Daenerys chapter is sure to be wonderful. I can't wait to see what they do with it. Emmett, say goodbye to us for the night.
Good night and good luck.
Good night, you guys. This has been Drunk A Song of Ice and Fire. Good luck. May the odds be ever in your favor, you guys. Happy liver beating.